A raw chicken egg is slammed into the board at high speed and cracked. This doomed guy, egged on, is superhuman. A man with superpowers. There are many different skills in this world, such as flying above the clouds, cutting through metal with his eyes. But truth be told, the superpowers of this young man tied to a cross are pretty far removed from lasers. He has the most useless power that no one would ever want for themselves. So even the guy himself has no idea how he, the most pathetic superhero ever, ended up in front of an angry populace on a scaffold. This power of his doesn't deserve that much attention. As the angry crowd chants death to the F-class, a man in glasses, root-bound, tensely watches the people. Sanjul. Came the shout of a man desperately breaking through the cluster of people. Kuhyuk. Hearing his name in the crowd, the surprised guy hanging on the cross said quietly. Noticing his friend, an overjoyed Sanjul shouts to Kuhyuk not to worry about him. The boy explains that he's not afraid of heights, and there's a great view from here. Everything will be fine. Looking at the tied-up young man, Kuhyuk shouts back at him that those bastards will just wipe him out. He asks his friend to wait until he saves him. Terrorist Sanjul Na, an unknown man in a cloak, suddenly spoke. Kidnapped heads of state, destroyed school buildings. These despicable acts of terrorism have plunged the country into chaos. You know who the real culprit is, don't you? The mysterious man asked, looking at the boy eerily. Remaining silent, the boy averts his gaze. He knows who's behind all this, who planned all these crimes. I take it that silence is a sign of agreement. The cloaked man looked at Sanjul with disdain. Flying through the air, a stranger addresses the citizens of Korea. He asks people to pay attention to the fact that unlike other terrorists who have admitted their guilt, Sanjul Na continues to deny his involvement. Some might think he's just a student, just a kid who hasn't figured out his power. However, the man in the cape asks the citizens not to let the guy's appearance fool them. A stranger has video of terrorists carrying out attacks. This tape is evidence that behind the face of an innocent boy lurks a terrible criminal. Take a look and see for yourself. The man shouted loudly, pressing the button of the remote control he held in his hand. Interference appeared on the screen in the plaza. After a few seconds, a tape called "Kidnapping the President" began playing. An unidentified man hiding his face with a hood is correcting a video camera. Hello everyone. A sheet of paper with that on it was shown to me by a strangely dressed guy. When he flipped through the notebook, the next page said they were a group of supervillains. The following he narrated may be hard to believe, but last week they kidnapped the president of this country. Saying nothing out loud and just showing a notepad, the guy smirkingly asks if the audience can guess who they are. Kidnapping the president. Mass bombings. Supervillains with unmatched superpowers. We are the superheroes of Class F. Just 3 weeks before that scandalous video, Sanjul was waiting to interview for an intern position at a small company. He's that unremarkable guy, by the way, the invisible dude sitting behind Mr. Cool headphones. Mr. Sanjul Na, is Mr. Sanjul Na here? Suddenly swinging open the door, fixing his glasses, the employer shouted. The surprised guy, pointing a finger at himself, explained that he was the one the man was looking for. Running up to the young man, the employer charmingly grabs his hand and tells him that he read his resume. He admiringly asks if the guy really went to the Leaders Academy. Is he really superhuman? Sanjul awkwardly confirmed and immediately tried to say something in response. However, the man didn't seem to need any more explanations. Just to think, a gifted person like this guy would work for such a small company. The megacorporations will be very dissatisfied. The employer, elegantly pouring tea, asks the young man to make himself comfortable. When Sanjul asks what about the interview, the frilly man in the purple jacket, adjusting his glasses, confidently grabs the remote and turns on the tape. The Academy of Leaders, the best school for superhumans in the entire country. Its graduates are at the top of society. They lend their talents to the best corporations and government agencies. Their abilities are front-page news. In short, it's a school for future heroes. The employer excitedly explains that he's a big fan. He is honored to hire a superhuman. Sanjul, lowering his eyes from such pressure, gets very agitated, running his fingers over his nerves and sweating. The guy says that he is, of course, superhuman. But there is one small problem. I'm in F class. The young man scratched the back of his head awkwardly, glancing at his employer, who had flinched in surprise. The next second, from a juicy kick in the ass, Sanjul, clustered together, flies out of the company building. While the guy was shedding tears in despair while lying on the ground, the employer had already accepted the dude sitting next to the young man recently. This asshole didn't even take off his headphones and get a job. What can he do that I can't? Sanjul thought disappointedly as the doggy that had run up to him sniffed his bag. Before he knew it, the dog was already running away with his dirty briefcase he had just bought. Yeah, this is what a typical day in the life of an F-class student looks like. At that moment, an unknown man with a case on his shoulder walked behind the guy. Interesting, thought the stranger in glasses as he looked at the desperate Sanjul. Holding toast with an egg in her teeth, a girl with an A badge on her chest is in a big hurry to get somewhere. While the old man below scolds the students flying dangerously above him, his granddaughter gazes admiringly at the students of the Leader Academy. Noticing another superhero in the same uniform walking nearby, the older man calls out to him to teach him a lesson. The girl asks her grandfather to calm down. The guy has a badge too, but it's not like the others. It's an F. Hearing this, Sanjul turned his attention to them. The guy scat unhappily, whereupon his eyes lit up brightly. In the same second, numbers and symbols began to appear on the young man's face. Looking at the frightened grandfather cradling his sobbing granddaughter, Sanjul saw their birthdays. Wow, so you two were born in August, the boy suddenly exclaimed enthusiastically. As he ran away, he told the old man and his granddaughter in a friendly manner that there was a great pastry shop nearby. They have reservations for a month. They should try their birthday cake. Leaders Academy, F-class, Sanjul Na, superpower, the ability to see birthdays. The appearance of superhumans in this world was sudden. According to research, strong experiences experienced during adolescence can develop a corresponding superpower in a person. But the thing is, if the experience is mundane, the superpower will be the same. Suddenly, Sanjul crashes into some concrete wall. No, he just didn't see some pissed off big guy in front of him. The young man tries to save his life by apologizing to this jock. In turn, the people who watch the guy collide with the A-class jock wonder if they should call an ambulance. At this time, a terrified Sanjul uses his superpower. Things are heating up. This pissed off big guy's about to smash this guy to the ground. Happy birthday, Sanjul shouted happily, firing a celebratory clapper. At this turn of events, looking at the smiling boy, Koo-hyuk was petrified. Placing a small item in the thug's hand, the young man cheerfully explains to him that he can see other people's birthdays, so he always carries clappers and presents with him. Scratching the back of his head cheerfully, Sanjul says that this gift is nothing special. It's just a keychain, but at least it's something. Let go, came the irritated voice. You're holding my hand. With a disdainful glance at the boy, Koo-hyuk said. With an awkward chuckle, the young man apologizes and releases his hand, whereupon the bulky man simply turns around, remaining standing still. Mockingly looking at Sanjul going about his business, the students of the other classes laugh at him. They remark that Koo-hyuk was very mean. This often happens when the F-class tries to suck up to the A-class. These losers don't learn anything. Yeah, that's the life of an F-class student. They're treated like garbage anywhere. Well, that's not surprising. No matter how you look at it, not all superhumans are equal. And the student council knows this very well. So all the losers are rounded up and quarantined in a classroom reserved for the dregs of the school too pathetic to be called superhumans. It was clear right away. This class is a dump. Sullen students passing the time by having fun with their superpowers. Students who are ignored by teachers and friends. Upon arriving here, Sanjul realized that they were not welcome here. And so it went on for all 3 years. Approaching the entrance to the classroom, the guy knows exactly what awaits him behind that door. A classroom full of desperate classmates who have lost any hope due to discrimination. Opening the door, Sanjul saw his classmates sitting obediently at their desks with their hands in the air, and a strange man standing next to the blackboard with a painted grenade launcher in his hands. The guy was petrified of what he saw. What? Oh, here comes the headman. Have a seat, the man with the RPG said, pointing his finger at Sanjul and leaning against the blackboard. Wait a minute, this is not normal at all. What the hell is going on here? While Sanjul was trying to realize everything, the unknown man asked him to sit down. "Alright, well, then stay where you are," the man added, noticing that the dumbfounded boy couldn't move from his seat in surprise. Bringing his hand up to his face, the man decides to introduce himself once more, now that everyone is gathered. "My name is Kahun Choi, and as of today, I am your class teacher." He raised his glasses and said with a sly smile, "Now let's get to the fun part. Today's after-school activity is kidnapping the president." "What, you've been assigned to F class?" Cohen was asked in surprise by his partner sitting next to him. This is insane. With his skills, he should be at least an A grade. Taking off his earpiece and scratching his ear, Cohen asks his partner to keep the flattery to himself. He asks his comrade if he remembers what they talked about last time. The driver asks if he can get everything ready. The colleague replies that he can certainly do all that. However, he wonders what Cohen is going to do. Is he going to organize some kind of anti-government rally? No. The man with the glasses answered immediately and confidently. "We're going on a little tour." Leaders Academy, a high school for students with superpowers. And today, a new classroom teacher has been assigned to an F class made up of total losers. One of the students, without raising her hands, called everything going on here boring. Flipping through the book, she says confidently that it's definitely just another useless drill. And if there's a joke, it's a lame one. Yeah, this dude's just messing around, right? Even brought a fake grenade launcher. She feels a little sorry for that guy. "Hey, teacher, is it real? You think I'm messing around here?" Cohen said with an indifferent frown. The next moment, the entire office was filled with multicolored smoke. While the students panic, not understanding where the smoke came from, Cohen, standing at the school blackboard, explains that it's his superpower. "The boy who cried wolf. If you inhale that smoke, no one will believe a word you say. But don't worry, it doesn't work on those who also inhaled the smoke. Your pathetic classmates are the only ones who will believe you." At that moment, two guys from the back pairs, taking advantage of the situation that no one could see them, started actively typing something on their phones. The teacher took the chalk in his hand, which was lying on the table, and then in one fell swoop, tossing crayons like bullets, shot the students' phones through and through. He asked everyone here to be a little more serious from now on, and obey your teacher if you don't want to be a liar to everyone for the rest of your life. Blowing the remnants of chalk off his hand, Kahun Choi said, sitting in the cafeteria eating a sandwich in one bite. Sanjul can't believe they got a blackmailing psychopathic teacher. Looking at his classmates sitting across from him, the boy, still sitting with a sandwich in his mouth, asks them why they are so quiet. The girl asks him to be quiet, as they are dealing with a very important issue. "Come on, Wonchik, does he love me?" she asks her friend admiringly. Wonchik asks her to wait a bit while he activates his ability. The guy sitting next to her with ice cream in his teeth is willing to bet he doesn't. Wonchik go, F class, superpower, the ability to choose the correct answer from two answers. Concentrating, the guy questions whether humans' love is mutual. When using this power in space, omniscient eyes are opened. No answer. Looking awkwardly at his friend, Wonchik said, "Weakness. Can't answer if there are more than two answer choices. Maybe it's not just likes or dislikes. There's a third option, hates." While human screams in despair, the guy with ice cream in his teeth remarks that love is over before it can begin. Looking at all this, Sanjul was surprised to notice that no one was taking the teacher seriously. At that moment, the TV in the school cafeteria started playing. It was broadcasting live from downtown. Superheroes in action. The bank robbers got what they deserved, all thanks to A Quadra. Look at that. As expected from the strongest superhero team ever, the newly elected Prime Minister used to be a member of the A Quadra too. He is the first prime ministerial superhero. Under his leadership, the A Squadra elite were appointed to the Presidential Guard Service. A Squadra is a non-profit organization founded by the A-grade descendants of the Leaders Academy. When people say superheroes, they mean them. Sangil believes they deserve it. After all, they're the ones who protect the citizens with their superpowers. And not just the citizens, they're the president's security detail now. The A-class students who approached their table started mocking the students sitting at the table. Those F-class losers are almost drooling at this news. Of course, because A-class is the best and A-squad is the best of the best. Leaning over to Sanjal, the blonde guy taps him on the shoulder, mockingly telling him that he can get him an autograph if he wants one. He tells the guy that it's better to ask him than his F-class seniors. They're all useless, beggarly pieces of trash. Are they even on TV? Oh, that's right, they're on TV. Despicable crime-ridden losers getting what they deserve from the heroes. Say that again, you bastard. Sanjal's classmate shouted angrily, jumping up from his chair. Hosen Yoon, A-class, superpower, predicting the development of events and actions without taking his hands out of his pockets. Hosen, with his eyes closed, dodged his opponent's blow in one motion and shoved him in the back. When the guy flew back against the other wall, the blonde man said with a chuckle that it was very predictable. They're not the equal of A-class. A-class is on a whole other level. When he approached Choin, the worried headman asked if he was all right. The boy stood up and said he was fine and thanked Sanjal. There are only 2 grades in this school. The A-class is where most of the students are placed. The very fact of having superpowers makes a person special, so being assigned to the A-class is just a confirmation of his or her exclusivity. You ask, what about the F-class? Here's an example. Aji Yan, F-class, superpower, turns garbage into a cigarette butt. Picking up the wrapper from the floor and turning it into a cigarette. Aji held it out to Hosen, asking him to throw away the trash behind him. Grinning, the blonde allowed the guy to keep the cigarette butt. That's how it works. If your superpower is completely useless, you go F-class. On the left, holding his head up is Youngking-chan, superpower, can catch cell phone service anywhere. On the right, sitting with his hands behind the back of his head is Kyu-jeong, superpower, can charge a cell phone to 3%. Youngking, looking frustratedly at his chalky shot phone, says how fed up he is with those A-class jerks, always trying to ruin their lives. Now they have a crazy teacher with them. Kyu in turn tells him to just ignore them. Look UFO, the girl suddenly shouted, then took a bite of the ice cream of the distracted guy sitting next to her. It's Yujuha, superpower. When she says UFO, people turn around. The guy with purple hair, showing off his figure, says he doesn't have to be a superhero. The only one he wants to protect is Natsu-chan. Everything previously listed describes pretty well who the F-class students are. Sanjal can't imagine them kidnapping the president. Teacher Kohan would have a better chance with the A-grade students than with them. Don't worry. There was a low whisper behind him, startling the boy. Chinsu Lee, superpower. Hair changes color when failure is imminent. Showing the headman his hair, Chinsu explained that it hadn't changed its natural color, and so it was fine for now. Phew, so the teacher was really just kidding. And I thought we finally had a class teacher with balls of steel. Oh, I'll call the police and turn in the escaped terrorist. Sanjal thought with a sigh of relief as he sat down at the table in the school cafeteria. Yes, I will. The boy finished his thought while sitting next to teacher Kohan on the bus. Wait, what? Realizing where they were going, the young man was stunned. In the middle of the night, a bus filled with F-rated Leaders Academy students is headed to an unknown destination. Korea's main government building. We've arrived, soldiers. It's time to kidnap the president. Teacher Kohan shouted excitedly, raising his hand joyfully. When they saw where they had arrived, all the students burst into tears of despair. It really is the Blue House. Taking notice, the class teacher clarified something. No one would help them. He warned them not to even try to call the police and reminded them of his superpower. They are all now the girls and boys who cried wolf. Realizing the hopelessness of the situation, all the students fell into despair. Some have already tried calling the police. They were simply asked to stop the pranks. This superpower also worked on Aji, who turns trash into cigarette butts. A policeman told him not to smoke at school. Yujuha said that when she called her mom, the mom just interrupted her and dropped her. The crazy teacher is right. No one really believes them. While they were in the shock of becoming the stupidest liars, he just took turns kicking them onto the bus. They were calling for help, but no one believed the F-class had been kidnapped by an armed terrorist. Scratching his ear, Teacher Cohen demanded the students to move. They needed to make it before the guards intensified. Looking at him, Sanjul thinks about what to do now. He's the headmaster, so he has to protect the class. It all seemed so unreal. They had no idea how bad it really was. Turning to the teacher, Sanjul says he has no idea what happened between him and the president, but he is sure that the students will only be a hindrance to Cohen. Raising his hand, he promises that they will stay away from the police. As soon as the guy wanted to ask them to let go, the teacher immediately aimed a loaded painted grenade launcher at his forehead. "Headman, right, you go first," Cahoon Choi said in cold blood, while aiming the RPG at the young man. The dumbfounded classmates just stare at what is happening, unable to do anything. Everything depends on her now. Woo Joo-ha can distract him with her ability. However, as soon as the girl started to utter the cherished phrase, the teacher immediately, in one motion, without looking at her, gagged her with the palm of his hand. "You're brave, I admit, but in this country, one must obey one's elders," Cohen said, turning around to look at her. "But let me tell you one more time, your powers won't work on me." A dumbfounded Sanjul stares in horror at the RPG held to his face. Oh, shit. He's not kidding, he's serious. Aiming a grenade launcher at the students, the teacher orders the maggots to hurry up and grab their gear from the bag and change their clothes. From the side, standing on the bus, with the divine ram behind him, a silhouette of an unknown being watches it all. Poking Sanjul in the back with a loaded weapon, Cohen demands hurry up and no nonsense. Feeling as if he was being watched, the man turned around sharply. Looking at the bus, he didn't notice anything strange. Maybe it was the wind. The teacher seems to be getting as nervous as these nitwits. The F-grade students will have to infiltrate the Blue House. Will they be able to kidnap the president of Korea? While Sanjul wishes the teacher would get the grenade launcher away from the back of his head, Cohen, looking through his binoculars, admiringly notices that the guards are indeed busy preparing for tomorrow's event. He decides to enter the compound through the east entrance. The students still can't believe they're gonna kidnap the president. It's not fair, they've been kidnapped themselves. The guy with purple hair, cradling the figurine, realizes he should have left Natsu-chan at home. The headman tries to calm the guys down and says everything will be fine. And so, Aji said, taking the lollipop out of his mouth, "You dragged us to the Blue House in the middle of the night. What's next?" the boy asked, casually recycling a lollipop into a cigarette butt. We just go in and grab the president." After telling the confused kids such a simple plan, Cohen explained. While he happily points his hands to the Blue House, the students still can't figure out how they'll pull it off. Pointing the grenade launcher at Sanjul again, the teacher tells him to go forward. He's in charge, he has to lead the team. While the boy is sobbing, asking what they want him to do, his classmates are already reciting a prayer for his repose. "Okay, I'll get it done. But first, we all need to calm down," says the headmaster, trying to calm down his strange teacher. "So here's our plan A." "There is no plan A. We don't stand a chance." One of the guards standing at the east entrance yawns, while the man in uniform, dreaming of a sound sleep, stretches. All the F-class students creep through the bushes towards the entrance. Suddenly someone accidentally steps on a limb, drawing the guard's attention. "You're already caught, you gotta be kidding me. This is Eagle 3, over. Intruders at the gate." The guard shouted into the radio at the same second, but no sooner had he finished speaking than a heavy metal object hit him in the back of the head from behind. As the man falls unconscious, the dazed students watch him peering out from behind the bushes. "They've raised the alarm. Hurry up and get inside," shouted Teacher Cohen, holding the RPG in both hands like a bat. At the same moment, the students jumped out of the bushes and quickly ran towards the entrance of the Blue House. They ran, they had no other choice. Their legs were weaning, they were shaking with fear, but they kept running. Looking at this strange picture, the guard's pistols raised, could not understand what was happening. Pulling the bolt of his weapon, the uniformed man sprinted out towards the sobbing students in despair. "What else could we have done? What else did you want us to do?" There was a stigma attached to being an F-class student. Just by seeing the F-class badge, everyone around started to mock the wearer. "Wow, apparently his superpower really sucks. Sorry, we don't take F-class students for internships. This happens a lot when the F-class tries to suck up to the A-class." That's what people around here are saying. We're F class. And F means we're losers. There's nothing we can do about it. Nothing at all. Sanjal's gloomy musings were interrupted by a blue-haired boy who jumped out abruptly in front of him. Yianicho, superpower, able to muffle the sound around him. Standing in front of the guards, he immediately stunned them, clouding their minds. The people in uniform can't understand what's going on. They can't even hear themselves. The walkie-talkies are useless too. The overjoyed classmates, still running, praise the surprised Yiani. He never realized his power was so useful. He only used it when he was studying in the library. Suddenly 2 more guards jumped out in front of the students, aiming their weapons at them. "Look, a UFO," shouted Yujuha, pointing into the sky. In the same second, all the guards who heard this turned around and looked up. "It's not for you. Wake up." Trying to bring Sanjal to his senses, a classmate shouts to him while the girl tries to deduce the direction to run in. Heading towards the main building of the Blue House, with each new step taken, the classmates begin to realize something. They're getting it. As they run, a fork with 2 main directions appears in front of them. At this point it becomes unclear which way to run next. "That way." Using his ability and pointing in the right direction, Wanchik shouted confidently. "They call us losers. But working together, even we can do something." Stopping for a break outside one of the buildings, Teacher Cohen informed the students that they had somehow miraculously managed to break away. He praises his students. "That was great. They even outdid themselves, considering this was their first experience of putting abilities into practice. You see that building? That's the president's residence. We're very close," explained the class teacher, pointing to a small house nearby. Turning to the teacher, the headman clarified if they would indeed take the president hostage. Cohen, taking off his glasses, tells the boy not to worry. In this country, juvenile delinquents are usually given minor punishments. The young man said indignantly that the teacher knew that's not what the boy was saying. Less words, more deeds. "It's too late to back out now." Smiling, the man muttered, "Besides, those guards couldn't even touch you. You may be F class, but you're still super people. You're a far cry from regular people." The teacher explains that the superhero guards, A Squadra, who have been assigned to protect the president, are now busy preparing for the holiday and are elsewhere, and so now is the best chance. "We'll kidnap the president and get out unharmed," shouted Cohen. However, almost nothing ever goes according to plan, much less ventures like this one. With a frightened look at his teacher, Jinsu Lee showed him his discolored hair. Noticing this, Cohen had a strange feeling. The man abruptly jumped up from his seat. At the same second, a passenger car flew in from the air to where he had recently been standing. The dazed students fearfully scurried away to a safe distance from the fallen car. Squatting down, not realizing what was going on, Teacher Cohen glanced over to where that car had come from. "Got a couple seconds of sleep, you know." Standing high in the sky and holding the car in the air, the stranger said, "Levitating cars in space." The man irritably wonders why all the criminals work at night these days. Because of people like them, he works overtime and doesn't get enough sleep. "Okay, whatever," the man muttered, looking down. "What brings such guests to the Blue House at this hour?" inquired the head of the Presidential Guard and member of the A Quadra, Sion. As he looked at him, Sanjal remembered that the man seemed to be on TV. Wiping his eyes, Sion wonders what a bunch of high school kids are doing here. Pointing his finger at his opponent, Jungkyun shouted that this dude was an A Squadra. Someone like him would definitely take out their teacher in the blink of an eye. "What are you yakking about?" With a resentful glance at his student, Cohen quietly said. Yujuha tearfully asks Sion to help them. She explains to him that a terrorist is holding them hostage. He has kidnapped them and brought them here by force. Kidnapped and dragged in, then? Sounds like it. Looking at the girl incredulously, the A Squadra member muttered, turning around and shaking his finger. Sion says they can't fool him. Any terrorist would start talking like that if they were caught. When an indignant Yujuha shouts out that she's not lying, the man, phone in hand, agrees to simply escort the students to the station. He will have plenty of time to listen to their testimony. Suddenly, Cohen took out a pistol from his pocket and sharply raised it and shot several times at his opponent hanging in the air. One of the bullets flew past, catching Sion's hair a little. The shocked students stared at the enemy with their mouths hanging open. He shot him. disappointedly glancing up at the hero above. Kohen scared unhappily. The A Squadra member stared blankly at them, using his superpower to stop all the bullets in front of his face, causing them to levitate in space. The next moment the bullets were on the ground. "Mr. Kohun, what are you doing here?" Sion asked with a surprised look at the gunman. The students were wondering what was going on here. The two seemed to know each other. Closing his eyes, the distressed hero realized everything. Kohen's presence means only one thing: the assassination attempt on the president is real. "Too bad, you were a good teacher." With a disappointed look at Kohun Choi, Sion said quietly. The A Quadra member asked the man below how he had gotten to this life, to which the man replied that he did not have to answer. Kohen then clarified to Sion that he was not his teacher. "Only those little ones have the right to call me that," the class teacher explained angrily. Looking at the hero with hatred, Sion in turn remarked that a real teacher would not drag his students into state treason. Well, at least attempted state treason, but that is also punishable by capital punishment. A Quadra Sion, superpower, psychokinesis, the ability to control any object in sight. Suddenly, Sion from the A Quadra appears. He's going to use his power to the fullest. What will happen to the F class? "Oh, that's the minister's car. I'll get a pay cut if I damage it." Gently lowering the expensive white car, the hero muttered. Meanwhile, the desperate students are trying to figure out what he meant when he said, "punishable by capital punishment." Yes, he's about to kill them all. This is the end. The frightened students shout to Sion that he has no right to do this. They haven't committed any serious crimes yet. The surprised hero asked the schoolchildren if they had decided to resist his will. A bunch of losers against one of the strongest heroes. Fighting him, with the help of their superpowers, is the same as coming to a gunfight with a knife. But still, if they try their best, they might be able to do something after all. If they unite, they might even have a chance against a member of the A Quadra. However, all ambition is shattered by the harsh reality. "Oh, don't worry. I've already seen your superpowers through the CCTV footage." Sion suddenly flew up to Wonchik and Aji and said coldly, "Cute tricks." But alas, after these words, the hero, smiling, snapped his fingers. At the same second, a passenger car flew into the two guys at breakneck speed. Flying off to the side, Sion remarks that he doesn't have it easy either. He has duties to fulfill. But since the criminals are minors, he has to restrain himself. After all, he doesn't want a scandal over abuse of power. But the hero is a little sleepy today, so he warns that he's not responsible for himself. One slip and everyone here dies. Purely by accident, of course. Looking at the distraught Sion in despair, Sanjal realized that they were finished. What could they even do against this monster? At the same moment, Sion threw the bus at the guy. After which there was a loud rumble, and a huge cloud of dust and dirt rose above the blue house. With his hands on his head in despair, Sanjal ducked down and closed his eyes, realizing that even after such a loud rumble, he was somehow still not sprawled on the ground. The guy looked at the car thrown at him. A huge man stands in front of the terrified young man, using two hands to hold back the bus flying into him. Koo-hyuk Woo, A-class, superpower, superhuman strength. In one motion, the bulky man threw the bus back at the dazed Sion, crashing into the hero. The bus crumpled like it was made of paper. Ouch, that hurt. Flying back against the wall of the opposite building, the injured Sion muttered, looking at the devastation left behind when he was trying to soften the blow from the bus as it flew by. The hero noticed that all the students were gone. Could this kid be F-class too? Sion thought as he shook his suit off the dirt. In the middle of the night, under an incomplete moon, a crowd of students struggles to escape the rampaging hero. Thanks to Koo-hyuk's strength and speed, they still manage to break away from the chase. Trying to catch his breath, Sanjal thanks him for literally saving their skins. "That's the A-class guy he ran into this morning, isn't it?" Koo-hyuk Woo, "Right. How did you find us?" the headman inquired of the bulky man. Koo-hyuk explains that he saw the teacher pushing them onto the bus, so he followed them on his bicycle. What? He was following the bus on a bike? Shit, I didn't think an A-grade student would get involved. Looking at Koo-hyuk disappointedly, Kohen thought. Approaching the frightened Sanjal, the class teacher asks him to smile, or he will totally confuse the young man. He explains to the A-class student that they are having a surprise excursion now. Everyone is having a lot of fun. At that moment, Koo-hyuk snatched the painted grenade launcher off the teacher's shoulder with a single swing. Yeah, then why did you threaten Sanjul with that thing? The angry boy asked, crumpling the RPG in his hand with all his might. While the dumbfounded students stare at Koo-hyuk's incredible strength, Teacher Cahoon is concerned about something else entirely. Damn it, he was renting this thing. Now he'll have to pay for it. Throwing away the broken grenade launcher, the student explains that everyone knows that F-class superpowers are not suitable for combat. What have you been doing here with these weaklings? Are you using them as cannon fodder? Koo-hyuk shouted, covering the bewildered Sanjul with his back. A hero shows up to save everyone. Can he kick the ass of a rogue teacher? The next morning, two A-class guys notice the F-class losers. The two of them remark that they don't usually come this late. The dark-haired student, grinning, says that it should be a rule for such trash to come by first bell. Turning to the F-class, he yelled at them, calling them assholes, to come early next time. His friend, laughing, agreed that they were sickening to look at. The whole day had been ruined. Passing by the two, Sanjul gave them a blank stare with a creepy look, then walked onward with his sullen classmates. Horrified by such an aura, the A-class guys belched in fear. Is it just me or do they look darker than usual? The dark-haired student muttered as he looked at the F-class after him. What happened to them? They're all exhausted this morning. Given what happened, it's not surprising. What have you been doing here with these weaklings? Are you using them as cannon fodder? Koo-hyuk shouted, covering the bewildered Sanjul and looking at the teacher with disdain. The guy with purple hair explained to his savior that Kohin had forcefully dragged them here. Defending Natsu-chan, he said that she was all freaked out because of him. Yunkin, nodding and pointing his finger at the class teacher, added that he'd also used some kind of obscure smoke on them. What smoke? Oh, you mean my superpower. The boy who cried wolf? Kohin inquired, glancing at his students. Throwing something at Sanjul, the teacher said he used it on them. The headman caught the incomprehensible thing in his hands and looked at it. Just a regular smoke grenade. I don't have a superpower that makes others think you're lying, the classroom teacher calmly explained. A perplexed Sanjul then asked why no one believed them when they asked for help. Are you really stupid? Or are you just kidding around? Yeah, because no one cares about such a bunch of losers. With a disdainful glance at the student, Cahoon Choi said, it was like being hit in the back of the head with a sledgehammer. His words had completely shaken their self-confidence. Even getting out of bed and going to school required considerable effort. Last night the Blue House was attacked by an unknown group of terrorists. To prevent further attacks and increase security, the Blue House released an official statement announcing the postponement of today's parade by 2 weeks. The president is perfectly safe, thanks to the timely intervention of a security detail, led by Sion from the A Quadra. Sitting at his desk and twirling the pen in his hand, Kohin is pleased that the holiday has been postponed. Now he'll have more time to think about his next move. Shit, maybe we should have recruited a better superpowered team. Suddenly, while he was thinking all this over, a door exploded behind him. A dumbfounded Koo-hyuk stands in the doorway in the smoke. An attempt at a polite knock on the door had gotten out of hand. As he approached the teacher, the boy stood in front of him, holding his hands behind his back and pressuring the teacher with his terrifying aura. However, Kohin was not embarrassed by this in any way. He asked the student to explain why he, such a great and mighty A-class student, was sticking his nose into the affairs of a pathetic F-class. When the teacher warned him not to even think about snitching on him, because the police and principal wouldn't believe some student anyway, Koo-hyuk held out some kind of note to him. I want to transfer, said the boy, shoving the note in the teacher's face. Say that again. Looking at him, the man with glasses said incredulously. Koo-hyuk, with his red briefcase behind him, stands on the doorstep of the F-class. Above his head, a plaque reads the new class motto, I'm a teacher and you're not. The dumbfounded students look at this guy with fear. It's A-class's Koo-hyuk Woo. What's the top A-class doing here? Is this some new kind of bullying? Walking over to the desk where Sanjul, who was shaking from his intimidating appearance, was sitting, the bulky man decided to take a seat next to him. Hey Koo-hyuk, so you want to sit with me? Sweating, the headman inquired in a trembling voice. Ignoring Sanjul, who was about to remove his belongings from a nearby chair. The guy took off his red backpack. As he tried to carefully place his bag on his desk, he accidentally broke his desk in half. Koo-hyuk Woo, superpower, superhuman strength. With his foot kicking the front door, Kohen enters the classroom. He asks the newcomer to try not to overdo it with the force. There's no super strong, state-of-the-art equipment here in F class, so everything breaks easily. There he is, there's that psycho again. As the teacher marches to his desk, the students wonder what they will be forced to do today. I wish we had a normal class for once, maybe math or literature. The very thought of what he has prepared for them is disturbing. What's that stuff on your desks? Textbooks. Put them away. Putting a stick on his shoulder, the class teacher demanded. I knew it. Another day of misadventures, thought Sanjul, putting away his textbooks while a frustrated Koo-hyuk, who was left without a desk, sat next to him. Kohen wants everyone to change into their gym uniforms. Today is their superpower training class. The teacher will evaluate them at the presidential parade in 2 weeks. He expects each of them to make some progress. When the class teacher wanted to talk about his calculations, one of the students thumped his palm loudly on his desk, thus interrupting him. As the girl rises from her seat, she says she doesn't understand what kind of training we're talking about. Did he forget that they're F class? They don't have superpowers that can be trained at all. She means they can't do anything at all with their stupid powers. Not expecting such a strange answer from his new classmate, Koo-hyuk asked what was wrong with her. After all, superpower training was part of the general curriculum. Sanjul, who was sitting behind him, explained that it didn't apply to them. They had training once too. But the teacher saw how useless it was and just left. Taking off his cap and placing it on the table, Teacher Kohen began to explain. Have you ever heard? You are what you think you are. You're gonna be a bunch of losers if you keep thinking of yourself that way. You saw it all yesterday. They treat you like you belong in a dumpster. Do you really want to live your whole life like this? Isn't it time for a change? I saw yesterday what you are capable of. It's time to get stronger. You can gain true strength. I'm sure of it, the class teacher concluded. Sitting at the front desk, the headman asked Kohen why he was so sure of this. Become stronger, gain real strength. Sanjul wondered how the teacher could back up his words. With a confident glance at his disciple, Kahun Choi lifted his glasses and smiled contentedly. The next second, the mechanism on the blackboard behind him kicked in and lifted it up. Behind the school blackboard hung many different awards, certificates and diplomas belonging to their class teacher. On the wall hangs a certificate of excellence issued to Kahun Choi by the Elite Force Institute. The evaluation committee recognized him as a first-class superpower training instructor. Seeing just this certificate, Sanjul realized what a great man stood before him. No way! More than half of all A-class students had studied at this institute before coming here. This is the best academy for superhumans in the entire country. Kohen said the students now know who he really is. To them, he's just some random terrorist targeting the president. But as far as superhero training goes, he's the best in the world. Who do you think will help you more, me or the president? Little ones, use your head. Sitting down on the teacher's desk and putting his foot on his leg, the teacher said confidently, do as I say for the next 2 weeks. And you will reap the golden fruits of your labors. Delicious treats and beautiful flowers stand on a beautifully set table. An incredible room, all decorated in gold, gleaming with purity. The shocked Korean president sits on his bed, cradling his pillow. While the president tries to figure out what happened to his bedroom, Seon, standing by the ruined wall, wishes a good morning to the head of state. Smiling, the hero asks the man not to worry. Nothing out of the ordinary has happened. He tells him that a bunch of terrorists just tried to kidnap him that night. The president yells at Seon, asking how it's possible to be calm here. He wonders where these criminals are now, whether the hero has caught them. Unfortunately, they managed to get away. But rest assured, under the protection of the A Squadra, no one will lay a finger on you, Seon said with a confident look at the head of state. Holding a lollipop in his hand, Kohen asks the class not to worry. He promises that under his leadership, their dream of kidnapping the president will come true. Well, if you practice these 2 weeks, licking a candy bar, the classroom teacher added, while the outraged students try to figure out when kidnapping the president became their whim. Raising his hand, Jungkyun asked where the training would be held. After all, the F class was not allowed to use the gym. In response, the teacher asked the students not to worry. He had already called someone for help. At the same moment, apologizing for the delay, a man entered the classroom, holding his head. He explained that he was late because of the service. And this guy looks a lot like a priest. Or maybe a black metal musician from some band. Hearing such speculations about himself, the man said that, first of all, he had been trained by that crappy teacher. And secondly, black metal is the music of Satan. It corrupts young souls. Clutching the cross in his hand, he explained. Puzzled students asked why he had a guitar case behind his back. Pressing the man against him and patting him on the shoulder, Kohen introduced him. Meet Vonrak. His superpower is dimensional creation. Creating measurements. That's right. He imagines a space in his head and voila, a pocket dimension. Such power can be dangerous if it falls into the wrong hands. For example, a supervillain with this power could stealthily lock someone in a pocket dimension or set up a secret laboratory for human experimentation. But this kid's good. Worst case scenario. He creates a secret confessional. Kissing the cross, Vonrak confirms this by saying that he will use his power for the glory of God. Sanjul immediately envisioned this dude playing black metal in his pocket dimension with calls to kill Satan. Raising his hand, the uncomprehending headman asked Vonrak to tell him exactly where he was placing the pocket measurements. Running up to the young man, the priest gave him a lollipop and asked him to support him. This lollipop is the key. If you want to get out, you just have to bite it. The headman has figured out how to exit the dimension, but looking at the candy in his hand, he still doesn't understand how to enter. Let me show you. Holding out his hand to Sanjul, Vonrak offered. In the next second, the priest, smiling, leaned the student's hand against his chest, after which the guy's palm traveled inside his body. Sanjul, having dropped the lollipop from his hand in surprise, found himself in a pocket dimension. However, it was not that simple. Once inside, the headman, unable to feel the ground beneath his feet, flew down from a great height. A couple seconds later, the guy, with great speed, plastered himself to the floor. At the same moment, a cold-blooded Aji landed on his back with a screaming human in his arms. While they were apologizing to the breathless Sanjul, Teacher Kohen collapsed to the ground nearby. The transfer is complete. As the students looked around and looked at themselves, they noticed that they were wearing their gym uniforms, although they had not changed into them. Continuing to lick the lollipop, Kohen grudgingly says that he'll never get used to this. In turn, Vonrak objects, saying that it's even worse for him. It's hard to even imagine how weird it is to suck people through your body. Be that as it may. Welcome to one of my dimensions. This is the testing arena. It's actually my personal training space. But Mr. Kohun asked me to adapt it for you. The priest explained while looking up into the sky. The students wondered what their workouts would consist of. Kuhyok can just pull iron and get stronger, but the others can't train their superpowers that way. The classroom teacher asked the students not to worry. He and Vonrak had already taken care of everything. So, who's first? Yeani volunteered first. Yang Gicho, vice chairman. Unlike Sanjul, he's reliable and responsible, so people usually trust him with important problems. Kohen asked the guy to walk over to the button and press it. Not doubting his teacher in the slightest, Yanni immediately pressed the button with his palm. At the same moment, the deputy headman immediately found himself in a small cage. While the boy is trying to figure out what's going on, Vonrak, looking disdainfully at a satisfied Kohen, asks him to treat his students with respect for once. The teacher, licking a lollipop with his already blue tongue, explains that this thing will just scan the guy's superpowers. There's absolutely nothing to worry about. Do you remember how you got your superpowers? Sanjul and Vonchik approached and the priest asked, "You haven't forgotten, have you? This is one of the most memorable moments of your life." When the superpower scan was complete, Yeani, standing in the middle of the cage, looked lousy. Suddenly, the creation of a training site based on the information received began. The cage along with the button immediately disappeared, leaving the guy alone in the arena. At that moment, an unknown creature ran past the deputy headman. Turning towards the teacher, Yanni shouted about the strange bouncing ball that had appeared here. Suddenly, this strange creature shrieked with such loudness that it not only deafened the guy, but also broke his glasses. "Will you shut up? You almost made me deaf," the young man shouted irritably, silencing the bouncing ball with his superpower. Having stopped hearing that disgusting sound, Yi exhaled in relief, wiping his sweaty forehead with his hand. But at that moment, those vile creatures jumped at him from all sides and started screaming with even more volume. Unlike the cheerful Kohen and irritated Kuhyuk, Sanjul forgot to cover his ears, causing him to stand hopelessly deaf and stare at the scene. One of the bouncing balls clawed into the leg of the deafened Yi. Guy's strength works on single targets. He can fight against 2 or 3 opponents, but not against a whole crowd. Damn it, there's too many of them. His strength isn't enough to shut them all up. Shut up. Finally maddened by those vile sounds, Yanni Cho shouted in rage while sitting on his knees. Suddenly there was a sepulchral silence in the neighborhood. Walking up to him, Teacher Kohan explained something very important. This small training was enough to increase the radius of his strength. A great threat awakens a great desire to overcome it. And such hope is the root of any superpower. The stronger the roots, the taller the tree. The purpose of this training is to strengthen the hope from which strength grows. Proudly looking at the exhausted student, the class teacher tells him that these are premium trainings. Even A-class students don't have easy access to them. While he praises himself, saying they are lucky to have such a teacher, Bonrak reminds them that he is actually a coach in this dimension. Raising his hand, Yuman yells at Kohen to keep his head down. They don't need a terrorist teacher, but she asks to be let in finally. She wants to train too. Looking at her, Aji is embarrassed to see that the girl is contradicting herself. Looking at him admiringly, Sanjul realizes that Teacher Kohan wasn't lying. Yiani's strength had increased after this training. I wonder what will happen to the others. Yuman, superpower, can suddenly run into a person she wants to see. Aji, superpower, turns trash into cigarette butts. After the training, unlike a disgruntled Aji, who expected a training session to recycle an incredible amount of trash, Yuman is delighted with this new experience. She can't believe she got her hand shaken by a BTX member. She promises to never wash it again. Everyone really faced their obstacle and overcame it and became stronger. Maybe it'll work for him. Maybe this is the opportunity he's been waiting for all his life. Your turn, Sanjul. Teacher Kohan looked at his student and said, walking over and pressing the button. The headman decides not to get ahead of himself. That's right. Who knows what he'll encounter? He's even a little scared. Beep. Error. What? Looking at Sanjul incomprehensibly, Kohan said quietly. Sanjul Na, superpower, the ability to see birthdays. Repeatedly search for a suitable workout. Error. Isn't practice starting? But why? At least tell me why. An exercise program can't waste time on flawed people like you. That's what it's all about, said the girl standing behind the confused boy. I'm outta here. Have fun, losers. Closing her eyes, she added grudgingly. Kiju Iam, superpower, absolute memory. The only one from the F class with utility. She was originally assigned to the A class, but she transferred to their class of her own volition. Why? Well, as she said, I can't breathe the same air as those freaks. This girl is a special case. She's not like the other F-class students. A surprised Kohan asked her what was wrong. Doesn't she want to participate? Kiju explains that there's nothing wrong with her powers. She just doesn't want those creepy robots testing her. Also, this training program is not suitable for everyone. Not all strengths can be useful in combat. Right, Sanjul? Turning to the doomed boy, the girl asked mockingly. Wait a minute, am I really the biggest loser in the F class? Frustratedly looking at his feet, the young man thought. Kuhyuk looked pityingly at the distraught headman. Suddenly he wanted to say something to reassure Sanjul, but it's Aji who speaks first. He comes up with Wonchik and tells the headman to take it easy. A lot of people here feel useless. Averting his gaze, Wonchik was reminded of that blonde guy from the A squad. He'd smeared them all. Looking up, Aji told me that he was a pretty good fighter, but fists don't work if your enemy can throw cars, and his superpower wasn't much used during the operation. But you know, whatever about this failure, I'm not giving up just because of her. With his hands in his pockets, the boy said firmly. As he approached the self-conscious Kiju, he remembered that she had said something about battle power. That said, no one had said a word to her that night. Even though her absolute memory was completely useless against Xian, When the girl aggressively shouted at Aji not to dare talk to her as if she was one of them, she was interrupted by the headman. A tense Sanjul asked the boys not to quarrel with each other. "This is the first F-class force training. This is a day we should remember," shouted the boy admiringly, trying to cheer up his classmates. Then he turned around and took a lollipop out of his pocket. When a flustered Aji wanted to say something to him, Sanjul asked him not to worry about him. He didn't expect anything from his power anyway. He asked his friends to continue, and he himself would go to do math. The young man brings the lollipop to his mouth and takes a bite. "I'm very happy for you." Turning around to his classmates, smiling disappointedly, Sanjul said, also taking out a lollipop, "Kiju says he made a wise choice. She too is about to go out to sit down to her textbooks." Immediately after these words, there is a flash, and the girl disappears from this dimension. A worried Kuhyuk is still looking at the spot from where Sanjul disappeared. While the F-class is practicing in the pocket dimension, the A-class is having fun in the stadium playing soccer using their superpowers. Sitting on a bench nearby, a dejected Sanjul watches it all. Even as a child, he didn't understand why he was ignored. He's superhuman, too. It's because people prefer to lash out at those who are slightly inferior to them. They lack the courage to provoke those who are vastly superior to them. They only show their envy when they get away with it. "You're not superhuman, you're no better than me." They're gonna say that because they can't stand to see you get the fruits of your labor. You know what I mean. Remember, Sanjul, your superpower was generated by a strong desire. Such an ability proves that you have a sharp mind. Lovingly, the man explained, placing his hand on the boy's head, but now the boy understood. "It's a lie, father. Times have changed. You can't do everything with your brain." Sanjul once more, "Something Mo." He was interrupted by an unknown object that flew at a great speed right under his eye. "Ah, what is that?" "Just a bracelet." A child standing behind the fence, waving her arms, asks her uncle, who is lying on the ground, to give the bracelet to her. A surprised Sanjul looks at her awkwardly. "Uncle, it's not like he's that old." Reaching up, he hands the thing back to the girl. She thanks the guy and introduces herself as Ayan. She is in the 3rd grade. Upon noticing the young man's form, the girl immediately realized he had superpowers. The child tells her that she knows people at his school can do cool things like fly and shoot fire out of their hands. She cheerfully asks him to show her what he can do. Withdrawing his gaze, Sanjul apologizes to the girl, explaining that his superpower has nothing to do with flight and fire. He tells the surprised child that he can find out when her birthday is, but that's all he can do. "So you can guess other people's birthdays," Ayan said thoughtfully as she looked at him. "Sounds really boring," she said suddenly. Those words pressed the boy's heartstrings. Proud of herself, the girl says she can also tell the young man when her daddy's birthday is. April 23rd. "What do you think? I'm a superhero too, just like you," she shrieked delightedly, finally getting Sanjul. When the guy gave out his last gasp at her remarks, Ayan said goodbye to her superhero uncle, saying she had to run. At that moment, lying on the ground, Sanjul notices a different but very familiar person in front of him. A worried Kuhyuk stands in front of him. The surprised boy immediately asks his classmate what he is doing here. Approaching Sanjul, Kuhyuk tells him that he came from that dimension. He doesn't really like training. Looking at him uncomprehendingly, the headman is surprised that he doesn't like training. The guy could easily become the strongest hero if he trained his strength. "That's the problem. I don't want to get stronger," Kuhyuk explained, standing at full height over his headman. What he had just said made Sanjul stunned. Those words had literally cracked his psyche. "Being strong isn't always a good thing," Kuhyuk added, averting his gaze. "Don't you want to be stronger? Do you have any idea what it's like for a weakling like me? I can't understand it." This is some arrogant nonsense from someone who has never had to put in an ounce of effort in her life. Sanjul stopped restraining himself and started talking out loud. When he saw Sanjul like that, Kuhyuk was petrified. "Why did you move to F class? Aren't you the strongest in A class? Seriously, Cookie, look around. How do you think the rest of us feel being around you? You're a constant reminder that we're all never gonna be good enough for A class. No one from the F class wants you here," Sanjul shouted in fury and frustration. Saying this, the boy came to his senses. Realizing what he had just said, Sanjul looked at Kuhyuk standing in front of him. Shit, I snapped at him. An unknown man was watching the whole incident from the bushes with binoculars. Yep, now I know where to start. Taking the binoculars away from his face, smiling, Teacher Cohen said contentedly. He did it. Verbal aggression. You don't belong here. Go back to your class. As Sanjul tries to find the words to apologize to his classmate, Kuhyuk looks disappointedly at his feet. My bad. I guess I don't take the hint. Turning around, the boy said frustratedly. After these words, Kuhyuk walked out of there, leaving the headman alone with himself and his gloomy thoughts. And you're tough, kid. The class teacher suddenly emerged from the bushes. Teacher, turning around, the boy shouted in surprise. Lifting his glasses, Cohen said disappointedly. He had now lost the only student he could rely on. The man explains that if Kuhyuk transfers back to A class, Sanjul will have only himself to blame. The frightened headman already imagines his classmate running away from him in tears, shouting that he hates him. Lowering his gaze, Sanjul says frustratedly that he doesn't understand how Kuhyuk could take offense at his words. I mean, he's on a whole other level. The guy doesn't understand why someone so strong would transfer into their class. And then he gets hooked up with a loser who can't even coach his own pathetic ability. Pathetic, you say? Do you really think so? Looking at the young man, the teacher asked, puzzled. Abruptly turning around, the classroom teacher told the boy to follow him. I have for you a special lesson, Teacher Cohen explained, looking at Sanjul and lowering his glasses. A few minutes later, the teacher already has the guy by the scruff of the neck, standing outside the police station. The investigators are inside talking excitedly about some crime in which a superhuman was the culprit. One of the police officers shouts in displeasure that he always said they needed more superhuman officers. Looking around, Sanjul can't figure out what they forgot at the police station. They tried to kidnap the president. What the hell are they doing here? Grabbing the kid by the shoulder, Cohen explains that it seems the police weren't informed that they were the ones who broke into the blue house. If the student keeps quiet, everything will be fine. When the teacher said hello to one of the investigators, the investigator mistook him for a deliveryman and asked him to leave the food on the table. Ah, it's you. Turning his attention to Cohen, the man in the green jacket said lazily. When the teacher approached him, the investigator said that he had heard that he had quit the institute to become a teacher at the Leader Academy. He praised Cohen's choice. After all, civil service is always a reliable option. Then he asked what happened. He's a taro, Sanjul shouted before the teacher gagged him with his palm. Smiling nervously, Cohen explained that he had just stopped by to say hello and see how things were going. Rough day. With a stern look at his student, he asked the policeman. The investigator, pen in hand, reminded Cohen of the recent string of murders. It's been all over the news lately. His team had been assigned to investigate. They've spent the last 2 months just looking for the killer, but he's very cunning. Not a single fingerprint. A recording and a witness were obtained from the last crime scene. The perp's either playing them or he's blundered. Turning on the tape, the policeman showed it to Teacher Cohen. You can only see the back, but at least it's a clue. Turning to the witness in the pink hat, the investigator asked for a more detailed description of the perpetrator. The man replied that he was short and had a beard. So this is that special lesson. What is Sanjul supposed to learn here? After apologizing to his teacher in his mind, the boy realized what he had to do now. Taking out a notebook, the young man began to write down a denunciation to the police there. Teacher Cohen is the terrorist who attacked the presidential palace. Please arrest him. Snatching the notebook out of the student's hands and tearing it into small shreds at the same second, the class teacher said admiringly that this was just what they were looking for. He then asked Sanjul to come over and look at the tape. An irritated investigator warns that they are not authorized to show this material to civilians, explaining that this guy could make their job easier. Cohen asked for a chance. Walking over to the computer, Sanjul activated his superpower to try to find out the criminal's birthday. Rewinding the video back and forth, the guy noticed something very important. In the rearview mirror of a nearby parked car, he was able to make out the reflection of the killer's face. On the 20th day of November in the year 1987, the young man said aloud confidently, "You gave the perpetrator's date of birth, right, Sanjul?" Walking up to his student, Cohen asked the question loudly. so that the policeman could hear him. The dumbfounded investigator jumped up from his chair. Could this guy really know the perpetrator's birthday from the videotape? The teacher, pointing his finger at Sanjul, confirmed it. The angry man in the green jacket warned that Cohen better not mess with him. It's the truth, I guarantee it. Besides, you know my superpower, said the man with the glasses, looking at the investigator. When the policeman asked his colleagues to urgently give him a list of people born on that day, Sanjul casually glanced at the teacher, thinking of his superpower. Ah, you don't seem to need a list. Raising his hand, the student uttered, I think he's the culprit. He has the same birthday. Pointing his finger at the witness trying to quietly get away, Sanjul explained. After these unexpected words, there was silence in the police station, and everyone there froze, trying to realize the absurdity of the situation. Sking angrily at the fact that he'd been destroyed at his own game, the pink-hatted criminal tore towards the guy. Grabbing him by the scruff of the neck, the man pulled Sanjul up to him. Turning his hands into huge blades, the criminal put them to the young man's throat, demanding the cops get away from him, or he would take the brat down. A tense investigator pointed out that because the man's hands are blades, that's why there were no weapons or fingerprints at the scene. Laughing evilly, the criminal confirmed that they had figured him out, and his hands could indeed turn into blades. Moreover, he has always wanted to kill people. He enjoys seeing the victim squirming in agony at his hands. This desire was what motivated his power. The policeman standing nearby shouted for him to put his weapon, or rather his hands, on the ground and suggested a peaceful solution. Approaching the doomed Sanjul and breathing in his face, the criminal says that the boy shouldn't have caused him any trouble. He promises to cut the schoolboy's throat as soon as they get out. Not all superhumans are heroes. Some prefer to be villains. As long as weaklings like this high school kid are victimized. You did well, Sanjul, came the voice of teacher Cohen. When the boy said he hadn't done anything wrong, the class teacher explained that hitting an egg with a hammer doesn't make it hatch faster. Everything has its time. When the perpetrator started to say that no one should approach him, or he would slaughter the kid without joking, Cohen interrupted him, indifferently saying that everyone had already realized that he was not joking. But people like you don't stand a chance against me. The teacher slowly lowered his glasses and said, annoyed. The stunned criminal screamed in fear. Is there really another superhuman in this room? The next second they, along with Sanjul, received a high-voltage current discharge from the stun gun. Blade hands. He calls that a superpower too. As unexpected as it may be, some in this world become heroes without even using their ability. When the man in the pink hat is taken away to the police car, the investigator remarks that he thought Cohen had come to make fun of them, and in the end they closed the case. Approaching Sanjul, the man said that recognizing a birthday is a pretty rare ability. The boy agreed, but also added that it was also quite boring. Wrong, the investigator said, not looking at the surprised boy. Taking out and opening his wallet, the policeman asked Sanjul for a favor. Holding out an old photograph to him, he asked the guy if he could find out the birth date of the person in the picture. As he picks up this photograph, the young man realizes that he has never tried to use his power on old things. The guy decides to focus and imagine he's watching a video. At that moment, something inexplicable began to happen. Looking at Sanjul, teacher Cohen realized that this was what he was seeking. Here it is desire, which is the source of its power. It worked. He was able to see this woman's birthday. Giving the photo to the owner, Sanjul said that this woman was born on February 1st, 1948. Taking the photo from his hands, the investigator explained that it was his mother. She was 3 years old when she lost her entire family in the Korean War, so she didn't know when she was born. Bursting into tears, the man tells her that she has worked her whole life to the point of exhaustion to raise him. It's a little late for him to find out, but now he can wish her a happy birthday when he goes to the cemetery. Hugging Sanjul, the man thanked the kid profusely. What the guy just did is very important to him. After a while, the teacher and his student walk back together. Eating the ice cream with gusto, Cohen asked the boy if he enjoyed the special lesson. Stuffing a cookie in his mouth, Sanjul, taking his eyes away, explains that he doesn't know how to say it. He was overwhelmed by a storm of emotion. Yes, he was very happy to be of service, but he almost cried. Unfortunately, the guy feels like it's just a happy coincidence, and tomorrow he'll be useless again. Holding the ice cream stick in his hand, Cohen asked the young man if he was tired of belittling himself. He irritably remarked that that was the reason why losers were always such a hassle. The teacher looked at Sanjul and wondered if he really didn't know what had caused Kuhyuk to transfer. He explains to the student that he is probably the reason this guy transferred. The class teacher tells how on his first day he looked out the window and saw Sanjul wishing Kuhyuk a happy birthday. But the guy doesn't even seem to know what happened when they missed each other. Kuhyuk was still looking at his gift for a very long time, even after the young man had left. And his classmates were surprised at all when they found out that today was his birthday. So this boy was very touched by Sanjul's gift. However, the young man explains that it seemed to him that Kuhyuk was not very happy. On the contrary, he felt that he wanted the boy to get away from him as soon as possible. In response, the teacher explains that he had his reasons. For example, maybe he was afraid of hurting Sanjul with his uncontrollable superpower. Upon realizing this, Sanjul realized what he had done and what an idiot he was. He started to beat himself on the head with his fist, and the guy started to say what an idiot he was. He didn't even think about how he felt. Cohen, who was standing behind him, said it was commendable that he cared, but he thought Sanjul was being overdramatic. What he was thinking about next, the teacher didn't say out loud. Training in the arena of trials should have hardened their latent desires, which superhumans usually formed for their own benefit. I wish I didn't have to hear them. I want to look at what I like. I want to be stronger. But Sanjul's case is different. He is not like his peers or anyone else. Looking at the guy sitting on his lap, Teacher Cohen asks the guy if he noticed that his strength had just improved. Sanjul's sincere desire to help the man broke through the walls, holding back his power from growing. Such an ability as recognizing birthdays can arise only from the purest of motives. That's the advantage of wanting to help people. Now it's no wonder why the guy didn't get the right training in the arena. Cohen decides not to tell the student all of this. Putting a hand on his shoulder, the teacher asks him to believe him, convincing the boy that he can become stronger. He's just a little different from his peers. Suddenly, Sanjul stopped in place, lowering his gaze. With a shake of his hands, the guy tells Cohen that he's not the rebel teacher he wants to appear to be. Looking at his teacher, Sanjul explains that he can see that Cohen cares a lot about his students, except that the young man can't understand why he would want to do something as crazy as kidnapping the president. Turning around to look at his disciple, Teacher Cohen smiled contentedly. Ah, so the headman finally wants to know why his teacher is doing this. That's why. Turning around in his chair to his trusty security guard, the president explains to him that he decided to become president of this country to help marginalized superhumans find their place as productive members of society. And of course, the presidency allows him to remodel the blue house into a cute, pastel pink castle. Hitting his fist on the table, the head of state added that he is not ashamed to say that he has done his best to popularize superhumans. For some reason, they dare to do this to him after all he's done for them. Why would they kidnap him? Shouting at Sion, the president asked if the criminals were still at large. Slowly answering, the blonde recalls the teacher Cohen had recently met on the grounds of the Blue House. With a dazzling smile, Sion explained that the criminals were indeed on the loose. After all, they were elusive. The head of state, chiseling the table with his hands in anger, asks how it is possible that they still can't identify them. A bunch of officers have seen these criminals. The guard who came up explains that it was at night. Yes, and moreover they used their powers on them, calling the regular security guards useless assholes. The president chimed in that they weren't worth their money. After kicking the two out of his chambers and throwing some kind of vase at them, the head of state said he needed to calm down and order some four-poster beds before they drove him into an aneurysm. Hey, he's up to his old tricks again. Wasn't that a gift from his wife? Sion said sadly, picking up the shards of the broken vase. Slowly approaching him, the stranger notices that the blonde man seems to be having a challenging day. Looking up, Sion looked surprised at the woman walking towards him. Realizing who was before him, the blonde wondered what had brought their great and mighty military advisor here. Rising to her feet, Sion asked if the chief had sent her here. Standing up beside him, the woman confirms this. She tells him that the chief is worried about Sion. He knows full well what the president can do if he starts freaking out. The blonde man remarked that the chief was, as expected, very caring. And yet things really weren't going well. He was just beginning to think that the public's opinion of superheroes was getting better, thanks to the cute and fluffy president. Then suddenly, Ko-hoon shows up and ruins everything they've accomplished, asking Sion to be quiet. The woman asked if he had told the president about it. Scratching the back of his head and looking away, Sion says that he doesn't want to give up on Ko-hoon. After all, the man was their teacher and the best member of the A Quadra. He'll do everything he can to keep the president from finding out. Clutching his head in despair, the blonde shouted out what Ko-hoon was even thinking. Was he realistically expecting to infiltrate the Blue House with the help of the F-class students? The woman standing next to him said that they should find out what the teacher planned to do next. At that moment, Sion received a call on his phone from an unknown number. It was probably one of the girls he had run away from. Laughing, the man picked up the phone. The person on the other end of the call asked not to be disconnected, as it was not a prank. The girl reported that she had important information about a possible impending attack that could take place at the presidential parade. A little perplexed, Siona asks her how she got his private number. A girl in a school uniform explains that she remembered him. When they broke into the Blue House that night, she saw the contacts on his car. By presenting such an argument, she hopes that the man will believe her. Hearing this, the blonde thought for a moment. "Okay, I'll hear you out," Sion said, holding the phone to his ear. Sitting in his minivan, teacher Ko-hoon, with a cigarette in his mouth, irritably reads a recent newspaper. In it, the prime minister tells the press that Mr. Ko-hoon was his idol, a teacher who cares about his students. He grudgingly recalled Sanjal's recent words, lighting a cigarette. "When I finally kidnap the president, I can forget about this crappy teaching job." There was a rumbling sound in the Leader Academy. A day after the special lesson, Sanjal tries to apologize to Koo-hyuk. After blocking his path with himself, the boy notices that he is stubborn. He wonders why his classmate is suddenly running away from him. The frightened Koo-hyuk explains that it is because Sanjal has suddenly started chasing him. The A-class students watch on, not understanding how a kid from the F-class can bully Koo-hyuk. Trying to catch his breath, the guy tells his classmate that he's at a dead end. He asks him to give up already. At the same moment, a classmate makes a U-turn and strikes the wall behind him, blowing it to smithereens. Unable to bear it, Sanjal shrieked and asked the guy to listen to him finally. As Koo-hyuk tries to get out through the hole in the wall, the guy bowed and apologized to him. He wants to apologize for what he said yesterday. Koo-hyuk isn't the kind of guy who doesn't take a hint. He's much kinder and more caring than the others. Sanjal explains that he didn't care because he couldn't see further than his own nose. He asks the guy to stay in the F class. "And let's practice together," he said, holding out his classmate's hand. A surprised Koo-hyuk asks the guy why this is so. A tired Sanjal explains that out of the entire class, they are the only ones left without a group. "I guess I'll say no then," suddenly uttered the classmate standing across from him. Bummed, Sanjal asked if it was because he was too weak. Koo-hyuk objected, explaining that it was because he couldn't control his strength. Lowering his gaze, he added chagrined that the boy would be crippled if he was near him. "I want to become the strongest." That's the simple wish he had, not because of some weird, crazy goal. He wanted to be a professional baseball player when he grew up. As a kid, Koo-hyuk did everything he could to get a spot in the starting lineup. But because of the force, it all went downhill. When he miscalculated his strength, he severely injured one of his teammates. The coach asked the boy not to come again. "He's too strong for this game. Superhuman has no place in sports." Hope, in an instant, turned to despair. After this happened, one of his friends worriedly ran up to him asking if everything was okay. That day, Koo-hyuk was not in control of his emotions and accidentally brushed the boy off. He broke his arm. The other comrades ran up to him and asked angrily why Koo-hyuk had hit him. He was worried about him, We don't need a friend like that. Get out. Stay away from him. He hits people. Get lost. You're scary. You're not our friend anymore, master. Can I move? I don't want to sit next to him." When the young man had said all this, he fell silent, looking frustratedly at his feet. Looking at him, Sanjul realized that the guy was just afraid of hurting him when he told him to stay away from him. The day the guy handed him his birthday present, which is why Kuhyuk acted the way he did, it all fell into place now. That's why he didn't want to get stronger. This guy was lonely all the time. That's why Sanjul's congratulations touched him so much even though he wasn't familiar with him. After thinking it over, Sanjul chimed in which case they had even more reason to be in the group. When Kuhyuk excitedly asked his classmate if he didn't realize he was dangerous, the kid asked him to just be careful when they were around each other. Grabbing his hand, Sanjul explains that maybe the boy can learn from his example. He's much weaker than the other F-class guys, so he's trained himself to be attentive to what's going on around him. Sometimes he becomes too vigilant that he scares himself, but as long as it allows him to avoid trouble, that's fine. So if you're afraid of accidentally hurting people, just hide behind me. Hide until you learn to control your power. Hearing these words, Kuhyuk, taking his eyes away, said that his friend could now consider him his partner. The guy explains that there is little use for the two of them in this metal singer's arena, so he will try to find something suitable. Smiling dazzlingly, Sanjul said that he would look forward to it that much. A few minutes later, the guy, smiling just like that, is already standing there with a broken face. When a concerned Kuhyuk approaches him, he asks his friend not to worry about him and just carry on. The young man is starting to get used to it. Now he could take a few hits. Laughing, the guy remarks that he seems to have gotten faster. Looking at him stunned, Kuhyuk was already regretting it, saying it was a bad idea. Running away from him, an elated Sanjul shouts that it's too early to give up. He has just started. At that moment, a classmate notices him. Walking over to him and giving him a hug, Ju-yoon explains to the guy that everyone was worried about him because he didn't come back yesterday after practice. Standing behind him, Woojuha agrees. At least he should tell her that he's okay. With a look on Sanjul's face, Aji wondered what had happened. Had the boy really gotten into a fight with Kuhyuk? Awkwardly waving it off, the young man explained that he had just fallen and then asked him to tell him how their training had gone. "Well, how can I put it?" the classmate said in a disgruntled tone, as if something was wrong. Youngi said that everything went well, and Mr. Cahoon is really a great coach. Yunkin added that their powers are getting stronger and stronger. However, that doesn't change the fact that their powers are still just as useless. Kiyu said that all that had changed was that his phone now charged at 5% instead of 3%. Yumin said that she could meet anyone she wanted within a 1-kilometer radius. Wonchik's answers are coming faster now, and Chinsu's hair has started to turn red when danger is near. Looking at them, Sanjul recalls the words recently spoken by his teacher. "So, the headman finally wants to know my secret. Okay. I'll tell you why I chose you and why I'm trying to kidnap the president." Without taking his eyes off his classmates, the headman says that they are not useless. Sanjul has another plan to get close to the president, but he can't pull it off without their help. An annoyed Kiju watches from behind the wall. In her hand she holds her cell phone with the recorder on, recording their entire conversation. Angrily walking out of there, Kiju calls his classmates crazy assholes. Are they out of their minds? Glancing at her phone, she realizes she's surrounded by idiots. Turning on the tape, she tries to realize how they could have so easily agreed to the crime. Another plan to kidnap the president. The classmates can't believe Sanjul is serious about this. The headman explains that if they have no choice either way, then it's best to come up with a plan that might work. Turning to the approaching teacher Kohin, the boy asks what will happen to the president after they kidnap him. The class teacher replies that the kidnapping is only necessary so that their demands will be met, and that won't happen if the hostage gets hurt. Turning to Wonchik, Sanjul says he needs a lie detector. After using his power on the teacher, the classmate confirmed that he was telling the truth, and he was not going to harm the president. The stunned students did not object to this and decided to listen to what the headman had to say. Okay. Then here's the plan. Follow the directions and we can make it work, Sanjal Na said confidently as he looked at them. An annoyed Kiju listened to the tape to the end. Angry, the girl yells that she's not going to participate in this crazy plan and wishes her classmates would have fun with the police there because she's going to put them behind bars where they belong. After saying that, she immediately got ready to send the evidence tape to Sion. 2 weeks have passed since then. As expected, the postponed presidential parade was not cancelled and went on as scheduled. A disgruntled Aji remarks that since there was a downpour last night, it's just terribly stuffy today. Noticing the F-class students, Hosen Yoon from A-class laughed and remarked that these losers probably thought it was a charity event and came to beg for alms. It sucks for him that they have to wear the same uniform as these suckers. His comrade, smirking, asks the blonde to just ignore them. Their job is to be extras for the real heroes. People won't notice them anyway. Sanjal agrees with that. It's true. People will not pay attention to people like them. This is the reason why they will easily blend in with the crowd and get close to the president. People at the party started noticing that they were getting no reception. They must be jamming it. It's a security measure to protect important people from a coordinated attack. So, right now, there's not going to be a connection here. Turning to a classmate standing behind him, the headman asked the one if he had heard about it. Youngkying, can you do something about it? Sanjal inquired of him. Of course I can. This is my finest hour, shouted the guy, showing his cell phone, which already had a connection set up. Immediately afterward, he called the teacher's cell phone. Sitting behind the wheel, Kohen answered the phone. Sanjal informed a classmate on the phone that the parade was about to begin. The teacher inquired about the situation there. The head teacher confirmed that the class teacher was right. They had indeed stepped up security. The convoy's full of Secret Service vehicles. Do you think they got tense because of our latest attack? The boy asked the teacher. Kohen replied that such a reaction was obvious. Losing to a group of high school students had hit the ego of these backstabbers hard. The class teacher asks Sanjal not to tell him that they were scared. Exhaling, Sanjal reminds them that they are F-class. They are always scared. However, the guy thinks the only thing they need to do is just put their best foot forward. Glancing admiringly at his classmates, the headman thanked them for all of them being here. Though to be honest, I thought some people wouldn't come, he said in surprise, glancing at the annoyed Kija standing behind him. The girl, looking at them doomedly, still can't understand how come she was in the parade with them. 2 weeks ago, the day Kiju was going to turn in her classmates and teacher to the police. Just as she was about to send a recording of the evidence to the police, an unknown person snatched the phone from her hands. Enough trouble from you, Kahun Choi said, looking at the girl. With a disdainful glance at her, the class teacher explained that he knew about her little call to Sion yesterday, and he planned to turn a blind eye to it. However, if she didn't stop interfering with him, something terrible would happen for her. After deleting the evidence from her phone, Kohen promised her that her big secret that she is so desperate to keep will be made public. Grudgingly grabbing her head, Kiju still can't figure out how this psycho knows about her secret. In that case, as nasty as it is, she'll have to lay low for a while. The time before their first move is almost here. The head teacher asks his classmates if they are ready. In the next second, all the clothes they didn't need for the operation were thrown off. Underneath the school uniforms were less conspicuous and laconic clothes. Now they are fully prepared to kidnap the president. While Choin wonders to Jinsu if he can see anything behind such long hair, Sanjal announces to the guys that the time has come and it's time to get ready. Running up to the guy, Yuman decided to clarify something. She starts first, doesn't she? With a glance at her, the headman confirmed, saying that they were counting on her. Grabbing the girl's hand, Sanjal reminded her that the entire mission now depended on her. While Yuman, embarrassed, glows with happiness, Kuhyuk and Aji, standing behind, stare at Sanjal stunned. Laughing awkwardly, the girl remarks that when the guy took her hand, she thought he was going to ask her out. She's a little nervous as everyone looks at him. She's always been a coward, but now it's time for her to show everyone what she can do. Wait for me, my VIP. I'm coming for you. Eating a brownie with a golden fork, the president asks his security guard sitting next to him if he is sure they are safe. While pouring wine for the gentleman, The man explains that the car is bulletproof. They will have to fire a missile to destroy the car. The disgruntled president reminds him that there was only recently a terrorist attack. Why should he put himself in danger? The driver reassures the head of state, admitting that they were taken by surprise that night because the guards did not have a clear plan. But now Sion has prepared a plan to guarantee Mr. President's safety. No one would suspect that the president's car in the parade is just a decoy. If the terrorists decide to attack again, they will be wrong. They will meet Sion on their way while the guards take the head of state on a safe route. Sticking his fork into a brownie, the president remarks that if it weren't for his approval ratings, he wouldn't even think of appearing at public events. The solution to all his problems is right at his fingertips. Deluxe premium cake with strawberry filling, recommended by famous food bloggers. While the head of state is about to eat the strawberries off this cake with incredible bliss, the driver notices something strange on the road. "There you are," shouted the stranger as she stood in front of the car. A golden fork with strawberries on it fell out of the hands of the head of state from the sharp breaking of the cartage. "What the hell? Why is there a schoolgirl on the road?" Grabbing his guard sitting next to him, the president screamed hysterically. Human pack, superpower, can suddenly run into a person he wants to see. A musical group performs in the courtyard of an ordinary school, while the fans around them are having fun. So far away, her love is so far away. Human is sure that such a free soul would never settle down with a cutie like her. Is there any way she could get the attention of the lead singer of the band? If only a miracle could happen. A miracle would happen, and they would meet by chance somewhere, like in romantic comedies. But Human is now standing in the roadway, blocking the path of the president's vehicle. "There you are," the girl said, waving her hands in front of the oncoming car. At this point in the parade, an A squad member, Sion, is waving in a friendly manner from a car to some little girl. Now the blonde rides in the presidential carriage, with full confidence that the head of state is alright. They also manage to track down Mr. Cohoon's car. His boys are on his tail and are successfully pursuing him. They have everything under control. Without Mr. Cohoon, these F-class kids are no threat. If they were able to send them home in tears 2 weeks ago, nothing will stop them from doing it again. After stopping and getting out of the car, the driver yells at the girl standing in the road, "Does she want to die or what?" While the president is watching, the guard asks Human what she was even thinking jumping out in front of the vehicle. As she smiled happily and barely held back tears, she realized that her ability had indeed become stronger. As the guards approach the girl, they ask her to move out of the way. "It's time," shouted Sanjul, lurking with a chuha in the bushes. "Look, a UFO," immediately uttered a girl standing nearby. If everything goes according to plan, when the guards are distracted, Choin and Aji, their fastest sprinters, will reach the president in time. Running into the vehicle, Aji immediately snatched the phone out of the president's hands. While the head of state sobs hysterically, clutching his pillow, 2 guys sit next to him, blocking all escape routes for the man. After recovering, the guards are trying to figure out what that just was. One of the men remembered that he had seen this distraction before. It was the same children who had infiltrated the blue house last time. The mustachioed guard shouted that they couldn't get them this time. They decide to grab Yujuka first. "Hi everyone, can I take a moment of your time?" came a friendly voice from behind them. Walking up to the mustachioed man, the guy tells him that the bald dude next to him is always making fun of him and his weird mustache behind his back. Immediately moving to the second guard, the high school student tells the man that his friend said his hair was epically loose. Trying to realize what it was, the 2 guards just stand still and stare into the void. The next second they started fighting, insulting each other in every possible way. June Moon, superpower, provokes people to fight each other for 10 minutes. Looking at it, Sanjul realizes that everything is going very well so far, only the hard part remains. At that moment, out of nowhere, a white minivan flew into the roadway. After passing the headman, the car braked sharply. "Move it, losers," Kitu shouted at them from behind the wheel of the minivan. As they drive away from the chase, Teacher Cohen asks his students on the phone where they are. Sanjul replies that they are heading towards the tunnel they had talked about. When the class teacher asked where the president was, the head teacher asked him to relax, explaining that they had him. Teacher Cohen informs us that he'll be here very soon. The only thing left for him to do is to get rid of his tail. Until then, he asks the students to avoid trouble. When he heard Sanjal's approving reply, the teacher noticed that the boy was mumbling as if he had seen a ghost. Was he really afraid? Of course, the young man replied nervously. Kiju is driving and he's not sure they'll survive it. As she frantically spins the steering wheel, a nightmare happens in the cabin. The classmates are holding on to their seats and the president is flying around trying to hold on to Kikiik. Sanjal, who is clearly sickened by this attraction, asks his classmate if Mr. President is okay. Koo-hyuk replies that he passed out on a curve. Anyway, it's probably better for his heart. While Yumin and Yoonking are hysterically asking the driver to drive slower, the crazy Kiju behind the wheel screams that she can do it. After all, she has an absolute memory and remembers all the rules of the road perfectly. At this moment, Yumin was held tightly by someone holding her shoulder. Aji asks the girl to remember to buckle up. While Wajuha is fighting for life in the background, the guy notices that Yumin hasn't eaten anything since she used her ability. She needs her strength to endure this trip. Taking out a lollipop, Ajay held it out to her, saying that some quick carbs should help. Withdrawing her gaze, Yumin glared at him, embarrassed. She pulled her cell phone out of her pocket. Turning it over, she looked at the old photograph she had placed under the cover. Aji was also at that music band performance where Yumin got her superpower. However, he was just an ordinary garbage collector there. When he noticed that the girl was looking at the phone case, he looked at her questioningly. "You fool," Yumin uttered, stuffing a lollipop into her mouth and punching him in the shoulder. Unable to hold back any longer from such a shaking, Sanjal covers his mouth to keep the rainbow mixture from escaping. As usual, an annoyed Kiju, watching all this, can't believe she's stuck with these jerks. It's all because of that crazy teacher who keeps her on the hook. Angrily clutching her head, the girl promises that she will show them. She will hit them where it hurts. At the most unexpected moment, they captured the president. Sion asked in surprise. Blondie can't believe the guards let this happen. He told them to keep an eye on Cohen's car. The radio tells him they're still following him, and the driver never crossed paths with the president's car. The dazed Sion realized, so it wasn't Mr. Cohoon who kidnapped the president. So these wimps did this to themselves. No, that's just not possible. It must be some kind of plan to confuse their agents. Cahoon Choi is the brains of the operation. If they capture him, the children will be helpless. Smiling, Sion orders that all adjoining roads be blocked and that Cahoon Choi be arrested. The Alpha team must go to the president. The man sitting next to Sion swept up that the leader of the nation had been kidnapped and the head of his guard, Sion, looks pleased. Hands itchy. The blonde man replies that he has misunderstood. His job today is to protect the person sitting next to him. Sion doesn't know what these kids think they're playing at, but even their small success has already been included in his calculations. Besides, their agents aren't complete idiots. Looking in the rearview mirror, Kiju can't understand why the presidential guard is still behind. Sanjal asks his classmates to hold on. They must not stop until Teacher Gohan finds them. But suddenly he notices something terrifying ahead of their vehicle. The road to the tunnel they were headed for is blocked. As they approached the entrance to the tunnel, the white minivan with the schoolchildren stopped abruptly in front of the rubble. Getting out of the car, Koo-hyuk suggested that perhaps yesterday's storm had caused a landslide and those trees had been thrown onto the roadway. Sanjal, standing nearby, objected. He doesn't think so. Those tree trunks are very strangely laid down right at the entrance to the tunnel. Aside from that, there are no other signs of destruction around, as there would be in such a strong storm. There's no doubt it was Sion's work. They've been lured into a trap. At that moment, the agents who were following them drove up behind them. As they got out of their cars, the presidential guards immediately pointed their guns at the schoolchildren. A man in a brown jacket relayed to higher-ups that an Alpha team had arrived on the scene and they had intercepted the terrorists. F-class has been cornered after an epic pursuit. Meanwhile, Teacher Cohen is speeding down the highway, trying to throw off the tail of the agents chasing him. After a while, a long traffic jam formed on one of the roads closed by Sion's order. Caught in this traffic jam, Cohen, irritably smoking a cigarette, realized he was in trouble. A squad car pulled up behind his car, and then an agent got out. As he approached the driver's window, the man knocked, explaining that it was a police search, and asked Kohen to roll down the window. When he rolled down the window, the agent immediately shouted obey or he would have to use force. Kohen interrupted him indifferently and told the man to relax. As the teacher gets out of the car with his hands up, he asks the police officers why they stopped him. He had obeyed all the speed limits because he knew the road would be jammed to capacity today. After his words, the agents looked at each other incomprehensibly. Abruptly clasping Kohen's hands, the policeman pinned him to the ground with a clatter. Holding him in this position, one of the agents explains that they have received orders to grab Kohen because of suspicions of organizing terrorist acts. He asks the man to silently follow them. Looking at them, Kohen asks if they have decided to carry out such a brutal detention right here in front of everyone's eyes. Maybe they should remind them of human rights. And he's not a terrorist, he's just a high school teacher who's too tired of dealing with teenagers. In the next second, agents were already handcuffing the man. Kohen was hoping he could slip away, but these guys really want to arrest him. Looks like it's up to the kids now, but can they make it on their own? With guns pointed at them, the cops warned the teens not to even think about using their superpowers. Doomed, staring blankly at the armed men surrounding them, Sanjul realizes they are finished. Even the fact that they made it this far is a miracle in itself. What will happen to them now? Will they be arrested? Maybe they'll be released if they come up with a convincing excuse at the station. While the helpless headman stood still and pondered his future, Kuhyuk stepped in front of him. While one of the cops, aiming a gun at him, yells "Stand still," informing him that this is the last warning, the guy gets into a fighting stance. A friend tells Sanjul that he will try to do something. He asks the guy to gather the others and go to a safe place. The terrified headman yells that Kuhyuk is certainly strong, but they have guns. The guy standing in front of him tells his friend that he'll be fine. When Sanjul replies that nothing will be okay, Kuhyuk turns on him and asks to be allowed to help him. "We're a team, remember?" he muttered, looking at his surprised friend. He's right, they're a team, but it also means that Sanjul needs to pull himself together. He can't always hide behind his back. He needs to come up with a plan. What are his options? Yeongi's jamming ability, Woojuha's UFO trick, or asking June to put up a fight between them. If only his power was more useful. Suddenly looking up and looking around, the guy noticed something interesting. He glanced at the man in the brown jacket standing behind him, reporting into his walkie-talkie that they were holding the kids. At that moment, the guy notices a very familiar homemade bracelet on the man's wrist. Sanjul remembers the girl he met as he sat on a bench and gave into bad thoughts. After using his ability, the guy realizes that the connection between the two is obvious. That time the girl in conversation told the young man her daddy's birthday, April 23rd, and this time it coincided. "Aren't you Aang Cho's father by any chance?" Sanjul asked, looking up into the face of the brown-jacketed policeman. Not understanding how this guy knew this, the man looked at him stunned. At the same moment shouted to his men, who were preparing to fire, to lower their weapons. While the headman hides behind his classmate's back, the man asks how the latter knew this. The personal information of security agents is strictly classified. "Ah, so you are her father after all," shouted the boy joyfully, glowing with happiness. "Father Aang Cho, I presume. Your daughter had a word with me recently. She said that you are so rarely home. When was the last time you saw her?" That's how Sanjul's words sounded from Mr. Cho's point of view. The tense man asks the terrorist how he knows Ayan. Realizing what it all means, a doomed Mr. Cho asks Sanjul what he did to his daughter. Looking at him perplexed, the headman can't understand what the policeman is talking about. As soon as Sanjul wanted to answer him that it was a misunderstanding, his classmates who came up behind him gagged him. "Ah, so that's little Aang's father. Smart little girl, you should be proud of her." Aji and June came forward and smiled grimly. The head of state dozing sweetly in the back seat suddenly woke up. Lifting himself up, the man yawned carelessly, rubbing his eyes. The president wakes up to find himself in the kidnapper's car. What happens next? Aji asked Mr. Cho why he shouldn't make way for them, or was he just trying to get in their way? Standing nearby, A smirking June asks if the man thought they would have gotten all the way there without any leverage on him. He asks the cop to think about his daughter. Turning back to the headman, the two of them with one look ask this dumbus to back them up and say something. A blue-eyed Sanjul tells Mr. Cho that his daughter is safe in their care, as long as all conditions are met. So the cop better not do anything stupid if he wanted them to get his daughter back alive and well. As he said this, the guy gestured to Kao Hyuk that this was their chance to clear the road. Upon approaching the rubble, the classmate immediately grabbed one of the trees. With a sharp movement of his hand, Koo Hyuk easily threw the log out of the way. Seeing where things were going, one of the agents asked the officer what they should do. The cop yelled for his subordinates to hold their fire. That's an order. Mr. Cho can't figure out if these kids are bluffing or if they've really got their hands on his daughter. Damn it, the policeman decides to call her and make sure she's safe, but unfortunately the connection is being jammed by the security services, and it will take a long time to restore it. Meanwhile, hiding behind Kyu's back, Jungkyun, who can catch a connection anywhere, is aggressively typing something on his phone. While taking a test, the boy asks Kia to stop fidgeting. A classmate standing in front of him notices that the boy is standing too close to him and asks for some space. Ignoring him, Jungkyun texts the teacher that they're now at the tunnel. The agents catch up with them, but Sanjul pulls them away. Moreover, Koo Hyuk is now clearing the rubble on the road. Tapping the headman on the back, June asks him when he managed to kidnap that policeman's daughter. Putting his hand on his shoulder, Aji agrees, saying that he didn't expect the young man to be so cruel. A dumbfounded Sanjul can't believe that his classmates also fell for it. He thought the boys were just pretending, playing to the public. At this point, shaking off his hands, Koo Hyuk announced that he was done, and the road was now clear. Awesome, let's get moving. Before he could finish, an unknown man crept up from behind and grabbed Sanjul by the throat. To think of it, that bunch of high school kids attacked me not once, but 2 whole times, shouted the president angrily, holding a gun to the boy's temple. The dumbfounded classmates can't understand how this happened. How could they have failed to follow him? After calling his guards assholes, the head of the nation asks if they didn't see him in the car. So why the hell are they just letting these terrorists get away? What are you waiting for? Shoot, shouted the president angrily. You're security agents. Protecting me is your job. All the doomed Mr. Cho thought about at this time was his daughter. That time Ian told him that a man doesn't have to come home on his birthday. Smiling, the father asked his daughter why she was saying that. Wouldn't it be better to celebrate together? Rubbing the bracelet in her hands, the girl explained that her mother had told her that her father had a very important job that he cherished, and so Ian explained that they could have a celebration when he was free. Holding out a bracelet to Daddy, she wished him a happy birthday. Clasping his eyes, the man accepted his fate. The next instant he pointed the gun at Koo Hyuk standing nearby. While Sanjul pleads not to and yells that the guy is just a student, the president orders the cop to finally pull the damn trigger. Please, shouted Sanjul in desperation to Mr. Cho, aiming with trembling hands at the gun. But at that moment, the policeman with glasses heard a loud engine sound behind him. At the same second, he is hit by a car at breakneck speed. The vehicle stopped abruptly, and the rear door immediately opened. Get in the car, hurry up, shouted Von Rack, looking out the window and glaring at the students. Taken hostage, Sanjul is overjoyed at the appearance of the rock singer. Threatening him with his fist, Von Rack shouted that he was just a priest. Clutching the joyous headman tighter, the president asked who the hell it was while shouting. His sentence was interrupted by a powerful blow on the head from Koo Hyuk, who had come up behind him. Sanjul looked at his friend gratefully and said that he owed him a debt of gratitude. When all the students and the hostage were seated in the car, Von Rack immediately gave gas and drove into the tunnel. Running up to Mr. Cho lying on the ground, one of the subordinates worriedly asked if he was okay. Leaning on his elbow, the policeman says in a quiet voice that they must not let them get away. He orders the agents to chase them. At the same time, Von Rack, sitting behind the wheel, is driving through the tunnel. While the surprised students examine the car from the inside, the priest says that as they have already noticed, this car is much bigger on the inside. It was provided to them by one brilliant inventor and his superpower. This car used to be a shuttle for the church community. After realizing that they were safe, Yujuha exhaled in relief, and the hair of the Chinsu sitting next to her turned back to its natural color. The girl also commented that she thought they were all going to die back when they were in that minivan and Kiju was driving. Wonrak can't believe Mr. Cohen let a minor drive. Well, that's the kind of teacher he is. While they were chatting, the president finally awakened his eyes and regained consciousness. Lying on the headman's lap, the old man shouted, asking where he was and what was wrong with his bodyguards. When Sanjul saw the president awake, he greeted him in a friendly manner. Hearing this, the man turned on the guy with a grit of his teeth. "You, leave me alone already," shouted the head of state, looking at the satisfied children sitting in front of him. "Aren't children supposed to be studying at this time of day?" Tearing his hair out, the president asks what they even want from him. Ju Yoon says that's a pretty good question. They kidnapped him for a reason. But it's not really us you should be asking, Sanjul explained to the surprised president, scratching the back of his head and looking away. At this moment, while sitting handcuffed, Cohen feels his ears itch suspiciously badly. Is someone gossiping about him? Looking out of the window, Choi noticed that they were being chased. When the boy reported that the bodyguards were already right behind them, Bonrak shouted for the kids to hold on tight. Then he pressed the pedal to the floor and accelerated, beginning to rapidly break away from the pursuit. An agent sitting in the passenger seat of the pursuer's car yelled to the driver to go faster and hit the gas. As they drove out of the communications jamming zone, Mr. Cho received a call from Sion on his phone. Blondie asks the cop if they've dealt with the kidnappers and if the president is safe. Mr. Cho tries to lie, saying that the terrorists have been crushed and the president is now recovering from the shock. Hearing this, Sion decided to clarify something. "So that means the little pink man is in your car, doesn't it?" pronounced the hero, tensely holding the phone to his ear. The startled policeman doesn't understand why Sion is being so specific about this. Not stopping his hysterics, the president shouts that he doesn't know what claims these children have against him, but they must release him immediately. Kidnapping a head of state is a serious offense. If they don't comply, these agents will just kill them. "Do you hear me? They're going to kill you," the president shouted in tears. Suddenly, the second their car left the tunnel, a powerful explosion sounded behind them. The service car chasing them exploded and burst into red flames in a moment. Looking at it frightened, the president can't understand what happened. Sion said that these service vehicles are bulletproof and can't be destroyed even with a bomb blast. That means it was destroyed by his superhero ability. Everyone sitting in the blown-up car at that moment, along with Mr. Cho, were killed. Staring in horror at the blazing fire, Sanjul recalls what Cohen had told him that day. "So there, little one, I guess it's time to tell you the reason why," pronounced the teacher. The reason why he trains weaklings like Sanjul to kidnap the president. One might think that this is his way of making amends. The thing is, Cohen was the one who turned these monsters into heroes. Cohen was the one who set up this crazy farce. It was he who planted those wrong seeds and grew them into so-called superheroes. The media is reporting that they have just gotten breaking news. Not far from the parade, a few minutes ago, there was a car explosion in the tunnel. And a reporter who had already arrived on the scene confirmed that the vehicle was one of the state presidential vehicles. The latest Blue House briefing stated that the president was allegedly traveling in this vehicle in light of the recent Blue House attack. The official state vehicle in the parade was intentionally placed as a decoy, but the diversionary tactic ultimately failed to lure the terrorists out. Watching this news, the mysterious man sitting next to Sion remarks that the bomber did his job perfectly. The blonde man, looking at the TV, confirms that he specifically instructed him to make it not look like the superhumans had applied their tricks. With a chuckle, the man reminds Sion that the president's government vehicles are bulletproof, and so it couldn't have been without superpowers suddenly coming into play. Holding a cup of tea in his hand, the contented blonde says it doesn't matter. Everything works until people start questioning things. Anyway, now the little pink man has disappeared from view. The stage is already set for the prime minister, who will now be acting president. Placing his fork next to the brownie, the mystery man tells Sion that it's too soon to relax. He should know that Mr. Cohen is not to be underestimated. When the satisfied blonde wanted to point out that Cohen had already been captured, the news reported that 4 bodies had been found at the scene, and the president was not among them. A dumbfounded Sion immediately jumped out of his chair and looked at the television. The bodies were sent to the National Forensic Service for further examination. There are suspicions that the president may have been kidnapped. The nation's leader has gone missing under mysterious circumstances. A few hours later, Leadership Academy. Wait a minute, Vonrak muttered, looking dazedly at the man in front of him. So is this old man the president or what? He shouted, seeing before him a crying head of state wearing strange glasses and holding a teddy bear in his hands. Clutching a cross in his hand, the priest yells that he knew this dude would get them in trouble, kidnap the president and then be arrested afterward. He felt it didn't bode well when Ko-hoon asked him for a weapon. While he was yelling hysterically, Chun had picked up on the fact that things were taking a very long time to get to Wonrak. Standing next to him, Yuman agreed. He wondered what the teacher borrowed the firearms for. To hunt cockroaches. Calming him down, Sanjul says that it is true that the teacher made them commit the kidnapping, but it seems to him that it is to keep the president alive. In truth, he doesn't know who is accomplishing this, but someone in the Blue House wants the president dead. Hitting the floor with all his might with his fist, the head of the nation shouted that, without a doubt, Sion had arranged it all. Only he and the bodyguards were privy to the sabotage plan. However, they're all dead now, all except one person. Grabbing Aji by his pant leg, the president asks him to help him. If they find out that he is alive, they will start hunting him again. Looking at him, the guy asks the old man to relax. With those stupid glasses, he will easily blend in with the crowd. A surprised Vonrak clarifies if the president just said that those who tried to kill him were A-Quadra agents, the heroes of this nation. Swallowing, Sanjul understands his feelings. The guy had a hard time believing it too when he heard about it for the first time. Still, becoming an A-Squad superhero is everyone's childhood dream. To think of it, his childhood heroes turned out to be despicable criminals. To be honest, part of him still thinks it's unrealistic. That night when Ko-hoon told him everything, Sanjul didn't believe the teacher, saying that if it's all true, it means that A-Quadra is after the president's life. And that doesn't sound convincing. Looking skyward, the classroom teacher said he also reacted when he found out. They would have kept him fooled until the very end if they hadn't shown up at his place in the last month. It seems to Ko-hoon that their current goal is to make their leader, or rather the current prime minister, the next president. That is why they are creating this massive crisis, just so their leader can conveniently write in to save the day, win the support of the citizens, and run for the presidency. And they wanted Ko-hoon to join them. It was some great cause. Let's fix the nation, they said, as if they had the right to do so. They believe they deserve more. These people aren't satisfied with what they've already been given, which is complete bullshit, considering how privileged they are compared to F-grade students. Standing nearby, Sanjul agreed that some nonsense if they really said that. After turning around, the teacher tells the kid he'll see for himself. Then they say they'll make a move at the bottom of the president's parade. Asking the class teacher to wait for a while, Sanjul said that he had something else he wanted to ask. Ko-hoon is a superhuman too, isn't he? The boy asks to tell honestly, and without making up what the teacher's ability is. Why was A-Squadra so desperate to lure him to her? You want to know my ability? There's nothing impressive about it, trust me, Teacher Ko-hoon said, turning around to look at his student. Upon reflection, Sanjul knows that the teacher has something hidden up his sleeve. They must get him out of prison no matter what. Re-questioning him, Chinsu fearfully clarified if they were going to rescue him. The headman shouted, saying that was what he meant. The teacher put his life on the line to save the president, even though he knew his plan wasn't flawless. They can't let the A-Quadra do whatever they want to him. Without hesitation, Kao Hyuk immediately said that he was in because he knows that Teacher Ko-hoon isn't a bad guy. So, any ideas? Scratching his head in annoyance, Bonrak reminds him that the A-Quadra have good connections with the police. Whatever they say to the investigators will be taken as nonsense or a joke. Putting his hand on the president's shoulder, Sanjul said he had some idea, not without risk, but it could work. That same night, BDB broadcast station. An office worker sitting at his computer irritatedly tells his colleague that he is fed up with the fact that every single story is about the attack on the president. Suddenly he gets a strange email in his inbox with the title "Kidnapping the President." MP4. Clicking on the email, the man says that these trolls won't stop spamming his email. He wishes they would just get off his back and give him a break. Before he could finish his sentence, the office worker was stunned by what he saw. He shouted for the video editors to come here immediately and put the video on the front page of the news. Sitting carelessly in the interrogation room, Cohen yawns with boredom. Behind the one-way glass sits an irritated Sion. His men combed the entire area last night, but never found the president's body. Kahun Choi, what are you up to? At that moment, the door behind him opens with a clatter and an agent runs into the room. As Sion angrily asks the bodyguard if he knows what time it is even, the man yells for the blonde man to hurry up and watch the news. "This video is playing on every channel right now," shouted the agent, showing Sion a tablet with the broadcast turned on. What he saw next shocked him. The president's kidnappers are in it. Abduction of the president. Running up to the school, Hosen, yawning, says with annoyance that he overslept. It's a good time to make fun of those F-class losers and start his day. However, as he approaches the main entrance, the guy notices a huge pandemonium of people and reporters. At that moment, after calling out to him, Kanchan runs up to him. Noticing his friend, the blonde man is glad that he is not the only one who is late. Showing him his phone, a classmate shouts that this is not their main problem right now. He checks with Hosen to see if he has seen today's news. Looking at his fucked up friend, the guy can't figure out what he's even talking about. "There they are, A-grade students," shouted one of the people in the crowd, pointing a finger at the two boys. Surrounding Hosen, reporters ask him for a brief comment on what happened. They wonder if this guy is one of those who sent that video last night. Squeezing the uncomprehending young man from all sides, media workers shove cameras and microphones in his face, asking if he can recognize the people in the video. The thing is, they were wearing the uniforms of the Leaders Academy. "Ha ha ha, got the wrong man, eh?" Clapping and laughing hysterically, shouted the Cohen sitting in the interrogation cell. Pointing to the investigator in front of him, the teacher is already in tears, yelling at the top of his voice, saying that the real perpetrators of the crime had filmed the footage while he was sitting there being interrogated by this man. Now he has an irrefutable alibi. They have no choice but to let him walk away. The disgruntled investigator, blushing in embarrassment, quietly explains that there is still a possibility that Cohen is involved. Not stopping gesticulating contentedly from side to side, the teacher asks where their evidence is. Seriously, taking people into custody without any compromising evidence. That's pretty messed up. He can't believe the police have stooped so low. Approaching an irritated Sion, one of the agents asks him what they need to do. Realizing that he really doesn't have any hard evidence of his guilt, the blonde man angrily orders Mr. Cohen's release. At the same moment, the investigator sitting in the interrogation chamber snapped his fingers angrily. Teacher Cohen, who was sitting across from him, spread his hands with a mocking smile. As he left the room, he turned around and thanked the policeman for his welcome. "It's not over yet, Mr. Cohen." Seeing their classroom teacher alive and well, the students joyfully run to him, walking up to them and keeping his hands in his pockets. Cohen, thanking the guys, says he owes them a debt of gratitude now. He never thought they would give away something so wild. Choin, standing next to him, explains that it was the headman's idea. "Thanks, kid." Stroking Sanjal's head, the teacher said. Looking at this, Kauhyuk says that Mr. Cohen is really a good person. Looking at him sadly, Yuman says that's a shame. Bad guys are much hotter. Looking at her awkwardly, Wonchik realizes why this girl is always dating troublemakers. By the way, the president is safely ensconced in Von Rack's pocket dimension. After informing the teacher of this, Sanjal asked what their next plan was. With a relieved exhale, Cohen lowered his gaze. "There is no such thing, this is where we diverge," he said, without looking at his surprised students. A Quadra can't be fooled by something like this. It's only a matter of time before they find out that Cohen is holding the president, and after that, they'll come after him. It looks like things are going to get a lot more dangerous from here on out. Anyway, It's time for this slave-driving psycho teacher to bow out. Kohen thanks all his students again for being such a great help to him. Without looking at them, the man tells the children that they can now return to their normal lives. Scrunching up his nose, a smiling Kohen remarked that they had made a great team, and it would certainly be hard to part. Suddenly there was a voice in the classroom, asking Kohyuk to hold the teacher back. The very next second, the classroom teacher sees a student flying at him at full speed. Immediately afterward, they collided, and a loud rumbling sound was heard. "Back to your normal life?" Sanjul interrogated the irritated teacher. Doesn't he know what it means to them? To be ridiculed, abandoned, and treated like they're a thorn in someone's side. That's what it means. Until he came to them, they were just students with only a name. A frustrated Sanjul says that Kohen may have brazenly used them to carry out his plan. But that doesn't change the fact that he's still their class teacher. And God knows they need him. "We need you and your expertise, Mr. Kohun," shouted the headman on behalf of the whole class. Looking hopefully at the teacher, Aji agrees that they'll fight those A Quadra assholes if they show up here, and Kauhyuk will help them if they do. Junking cheered him on and shouted happily that Kauhyuk would easily kick their asses. Sitting alone at the back of the classroom, Kiju, for the first time ever, didn't object. Looking at them all fearfully, Kahun Choi realized everything. He's the one who helped make the A Quadra what they are now. Sion said the same thing that time. "We need you." Breathing heavily, the teacher leaned on the desk. "These kids, they're different from them." Kohen agrees with Sanjul. He knew what he was getting into when he started training superhumans. Looking at his feet, the teacher asks his students if they are sure of what they just said. After all, they will eventually become public enemy number one. Taking his gaze away, Sanjul remembers something. He places a small gift next to the flowers. Only these two things lie on a lonely desk. The world already crossed us off when it bestowed these useless abilities, he said, smiling sadly. Lowering his glasses, a satisfied Kohen grins and says that in that case, they need to show the world what they can do. Their next step, jump to a sufficient level to give the A Quadra a fight. "So what are you waiting for? Let's get these tables out of the way and start our lesson today," shouted their classroom teacher. Upon hearing this, all his disciples began to rejoice. Sanjul looked at his teacher in fascination. When Kohen said all this, the president looked at him tensely but hopefully. That's when reporters bust through the door of the A class. Holding the front door open, a dazed Hosen tries to figure out what the hell is going on. A friend standing nearby yells at him to use his fucking superpower. This dude is the only one who can read the flow. After finding that fateful video from the president's kidnappers that flooded the internet, Kenshin noticed that the people in it were actually wearing their school's uniform. After turning on the clip, the guy held out his phone to his friend to take a look at it. Crazy conspiracy theories are spreading on the internet and social media. People are saying that only A-class students could produce something like this. After using his ability, Hosen notices something strange. Wait a minute, aren't these guys those F-class losers? Power-up mole. Ever heard of it? Being able to hold your breath for a long time underwater doesn't automatically make you a swimming athlete, you know. No. There is more to being a superhuman than having powerful abilities. Whether or not you can fully utilize your potential is the big question. And if kids want to get their skills pumping fast, they need equipment that suits their requirements. Fortunately for the students, Kohen knows people who sell exactly what they are looking for right now. Immediately after saying that, the teacher clicked on the app icon. "Hello, thank you for choosing the power-up mall," shouted two strange men, abruptly turning from the phone. "Meet the man on the left in the dog hat, that's Steve, and the man in the kitty hat, that's Jobs." And together they are. Interrupting their introduction, Kohen emotionlessly asked the guys to just get on with their work. Coughing, Steve explains that they're offering a selection of life-changing items that kids won't want to miss. This hat he's wearing, for example, can knock a man out if he touches it. Of course, the guy was inspired by knockout superpowers when he created it. To demonstrate, he asked his friend to simply touch the nose of this hat. The very next second, Jobs was out of it. Raising her hand, Yu Juha asked her to sell her one of these. Kohen explains to the class that these two are also superhumans. They develop new products using their combined abilities. Steve, superpower, mimicry. Jobs, superpower, materialization. Steve creates copies of the abilities and Jobs is already turning everything into a final product. And voila. And that's how their products are invented. They are all one-of-a-kind custom-designed items meant to support the wearer's abilities. But actually, they are unique mostly because Steve's superpower only allows him to make one copy of everything. So buyers should choose more carefully because there is no guarantee. A delighted Weakling says that it's all awesome nonetheless. He asks if there are any cell phones in stock. Looking at him shamefully, Aji reminds him that a classmate can just go to an old phone store and get what he's looking for there. Grinning, Yuman is willing to bet that these two don't have a product to match her lousy ability. Looking at her, Jobs said she must be joking. He could create up to 100 different devices just for her alone. We could copy your ability into a compass so you can track down your target. Or who is a magnetized glove, you could even pull them towards you. Oh, or a belt instead, perhaps that way you can get all touchy-feely with your desired target. Huh, Steve and Jobs shouted as they began to list all the possible applications. The delighted students immediately ran up to them. They want to pick some up for themselves as well. The guy with purple hair wants one for his Natsu-chan. Weakling says again that he needs a new phone. Tugging on his arm, Aji reminds him that the guy can still just go to the fucking store. As classmates crowd around one table, Sanjul tries to quiet them down and asks them to get in line. Looking at him, Kohen notices that the timid headman, slowly but surely, is beginning to prove himself a capable team captain. Fixing his glasses, the teacher recalls that he had not expected such a pleasant surprise before when he decided to give these losers a chance. Things are taking a pleasant turn of events. He had never enjoyed learning so much in all these years. Plus they're improving much faster than he thought they would. It's really nice to see these kids realize their true potential. Kohun just hopes their progress doesn't accelerate too quickly. He doesn't want things to go sideways for them. Smacking himself on the forehead with the palm of his hand, the teacher realizes it's too late to think about it. He just needs to focus on the best way to hide the president. Kohen needs to hide him somewhere safe before the A Quadra assassins arrive. Is there anything they can use besides Von Rack's pocket dimension? At that moment, the teacher was called out by the president. The worried old man said he had to excommunicate to the restroom. Okay, then go. I'm not your babysitter, Kohen pronounced, glaring at him. The angry president shouted that the teacher was responsible for keeping him safe. Reluctantly agreeing, Kohen scratched the back of his head and realized what a hassle it was to guard this old man. An annoyed Kiju is watching the whole thing. Washing his hands in the sink, the president clarifies, shouldn't this be the best academy just for superhumans in the country? The government gives enough funding to this school. So why is everything around here in such shambles? Standing with phones in hand, Kohen explains that it's all because the restroom is only for the F class. You see, this school has its own caste system. Turning off the water, the president said he was curious about something. Why would someone like Kohun volunteer to take on the F class? The head of state has actually heard of him. Mr. Kohun was once a candidate for Minister of Superhuman Affairs. And his unique ability is force detection. It's rare even among the best of superhumans. They say Kohen's ability goes beyond the usual detection of superpowers that people possess. It also allows him to see each person's strengths, weaknesses and growth potential. And despite this, he sacrificed his political career to become an ordinary mediocre teacher. Why? Why is he wasting his talent? Why waste time on the likes of them? The head of state asked while Kiju stood behind the wall eavesdropping. Well, do you like them? Yanggi Cho, superpower, quiet zone. A pair of sneakers customized using his own ability. Dampens footsteps. Yujuha got a mini drone that can gather the attention of even more people. Apologizing to Sanjul, Steve and Jobs say that they need a little more time to create his item. The guy asks them not to worry. Truth be told, that's what he expected. And this one's for you, big guy, Steve said, holding something out to Kuhyuk. A pair of gloves that can contain his power. You said your superpower was too strong, right? That's a rather unusual concern. But anyway, wearing this, your physical abilities will drop to the level of a regular gym rat, Steve said, looking at a delighted Kuhyuk. In a way, They are like seals. After that, Steve and Jobs shouted that they were leaving to prepare items for the others. And one of them reminded the big guy that if he wanted his power back, he just had to take off his gloves. Easy peasy. What these two have just done means a lot to him. He will finally be able to live like a normal person. Standing nearby, Sanjul looked at his friend with relief. "I'm so happy for you, Kuhyuk," said the headman, happily running up to the lad. But when Sanjul decided to congratulate his classmate for finally being able to contain his power, his words were interrupted by a terrible rumble at the entrance to the classroom. "Hey, losers," shouted an exasperated Hosen, kicking the door open and walking in with his boys. Showing them the video, the blonde asks the scum if they did it. He knows these guys are behind it all. He keeps screaming that everyone blames the A class for what happened. What was this lame video even made for? Covering his friends with himself, Yeonhee tells the blonde to shut up. It's not his class. And anyway, since it is, where's his proof? What proof? Does Hosen look like an idiot to them? What he means is that playing the whole nation, it's pretty crazy. With a creepy smile, Kangchin blames Yeonhee for what he's done. Him and those attention-seeking losers who made the video, right? The angered deputy headman shouted for Kangchin to shut his mouth. Walking up to him, the A-class guy asks, mockingly, if Yeonhee has found real friends this time. Look, people are pointing fingers at us. They're saying only an A-class could pull shit like this. You losers never even crossed their minds. You want to know why? Walking up to him, Kangchin shouted, because they don't expect anything from a bunch of worthless morons like you. And because Class A is just so far out of your league that you're seen as even less than the dirt on our feet. What if we pulled it off? Said an exasperated Sanjul. What if we actually did something you can't? Would that make you like the dirt on our feet? With an irritated glance at him, Hosen visibly tensed up. Looking contentedly at Sanjul, he remarks that it looks like these guys have gotten quite an ego boost since they've been assigned a new class teacher. Hosen proposes to settle the dispute with a duel. And as for the bets, well, losers are leaving this school forever.
Pet the cat.